Let's start with something that might sound weird at first. Your IQ isn't the thing that saves your brain as you age. It's your cognitive reserve. Yeah, I know. Cognitive reserve sounds like one of those fancy academic terms people throw around to sound smart. But hang on. This one's actually kind of mind-blowing once you understand what it really means and why it starts mattering a lot once you hit your 50s. So let's break it down. Imagine your brain is a city. IQ is like the height of your skyscrapers, how tall they go, how flashy, how fast the elevators move. But cognitive reserve? That's the side streets, the backup generators, the secret tunnels. It's how well the city keeps functioning even if a few buildings start falling apart. And spoiler alert, buildings do start falling apart. That's just part of aging. Memory slips. Mental speed slows down. Some connections fade. But if you've built up a strong cognitive reserve, your brain has backup routes. It reroutes the traffic, keeps you thinking clearly, solving problems, and remembering names, even if the usual highways are under construction. And here's the kicker. Cognitive reserve is something you build, not something you're born with. IQ is mostly genetic. You can't really control how smart you were at 18. But cognitive reserve, that's all about how you use your brain over time, especially across decades. And by the time you hit your 50s, the brain starts to cash in on whatever reserve you've built up. So what actually builds this stuff? It's not doing math problems or taking brain quizzes. It's not memorizing phone numbers or learning how to code. It's weird stuff, the life stuff, like picking up a new hobby in your 40s, learning a second language just for fun, taking dance classes even though you've got 2 left feet, reading books that make you go, wait, what? Traveling somewhere that makes your brain work harder, even just navigating a new grocery store in another country. Your brain loves novelty. It grows when you force it out of autopilot. And every time you learn something unfamiliar, struggle with it, adapt, and finally get it, that's a cognitive reserve being built, quietly, behind the scenes. Now, why does this start to matter in your 50s? Because this is when the brain starts to lose some of its old tricks. Your reaction speed slows. Your ability to juggle multiple tasks drops a bit. And if you haven't been building those side streets and detour routes, the traffic jam starts to get real. But if you have been building that reserve, here's the magic. Even if your brain takes a few hits, like from stress, sleep loss, or even something more serious like early dementia, you won't feel the impact the same way. People with high cognitive reserves can lose brain volume and still function just fine. It's like they've got this mental buffer, more mental gears to shift into. And no, this doesn't mean you have to go back to school or take online courses about particle physics. That's not what this is about. In fact, you can start building cognitive reserves even now, in your 50s, 60s, 70s. It's never too late unless you stop trying. It just means stay curious, try new things. Don't let your routines turn into ruts. Talk to people who think differently than you do. Take on challenges that feel slightly out of your depth, even if it's uncomfortable. Actually, especially if it's uncomfortable. That's the point. Want to know something wild? Studies of nuns, actual Catholic nuns, showed that some of them had full-blown Alzheimer's plaques in their brains, but never showed symptoms. Why? Because they lived intellectually active lives, writing journals, teaching, reading, debating ideas. They had massive cognitive reserves, so their brains adapted around the damage and they stayed sharp. That's not magic. That's resilience. That's years of feeding the brain with new ideas and new challenges, even when nobody was grading them for it. So no, you don't have to be a genius to age well. You just have to keep your brain on its toes.
And if you're in your 50s right now, this is exactly when it starts to matter. Not because it's too late, but because your brain is starting to take inventory. It's like, all right, what do we have in storage? Any backup plans? Any extra wiring in case things start short-circuiting? If the answer is yes, you're in great shape. If the answer is no, you still have time to build it. Take a new route to work. Read something weird. Learn how to make sushi. You don't have to be brilliant. You just have to stay interested. Because in the end, it's not about being the smartest person in the room. It's about having enough mental side streets when life blocks off your main road.
You may gain emotional intelligence. Here's something nobody tells you when you hit your 50s. You might actually get better at handling people. Like, weirdly better. Not because you suddenly have all the answers, not because you've read 1,000 self-help books, but because something shifts in your brain. Something kind of beautiful, actually. It's called emotional intelligence. And no, it's not just some HR buzzword or corporate leadership fluff. Emotional intelligence is your ability to understand emotions, yours and other people's, and to handle situations in a way that's calm, mature, and, well, not a total train wreck. And guess what? It tends to go up in your 50s. Seriously. You might not even notice it at first, but one day you're in a conversation that would have sent you into a spiral 10 years ago, and now you're like, that wasn't such a big deal. Someone's being passive-aggressive? You don't take the bait. Someone's venting at you. You listen, really listen, without needing to fix it. You stop trying to win every argument. You start asking better questions instead. And here's the key. It doesn't come from being nicer or softer. It comes from having perspective. That's what changes. In your 20s and 30s, everything feels urgent. Every emotion is turned up to 11. Someone's mad at you? Disaster. You made a mistake? End of the world. Your friend cancels plans? Must mean they hate you. But by the time you reach your 50s, you've been through enough to realize most things aren't personal. Most moods pass. Most people are just doing their best, even when they're annoying. And yeah, your brain helps you out here. There's this part of your brain called the default mode network. It's like your brain's background operating system. It's involved in self-reflection, daydreaming, thinking about other people, and processing emotion. Well, research shows that this network becomes more efficient as you age. You start seeing emotional patterns more clearly. You're better at zooming out, at not getting sucked into emotional whirlpools. You start thinking, wait, I've seen this movie before. I know how it ends. That's emotional intelligence. And it's not about controlling your emotions. It's more about navigating them. Like being the captain of a ship. You can't stop the waves, but you learn how to steer. And no, this doesn't mean you become a robot. You still feel things, sometimes deeply, but you're less afraid of feelings. Less likely to react in the heat of the moment. More likely to say, let me sleep on it, or I'm not sure how I feel yet. And you know what's really interesting? People around you start to notice. They come to you for advice. They tell you things they wouldn't have told you 10 years ago. They trust you more, not because you have all the right words, but because you're not trying to fix them, judge them, or compete with them. You're just solid, steady. That's the gift of your 50s. You become less reactive, less insecure, less busy trying to prove anything. And from that place, you listen better, you speak more kindly, you set healthier boundaries, and people feel that. Here's a little example. Let's say your coworker lashes out at you in a meeting. In your 30s, maybe you would have snapped back or gone home stewing over it, thinking about what you should have said. But now, you pause,
You wonder what might be going on with them. You respond, maybe with a calm, "Let's talk later. Sounds like you're frustrated." You just diffused the bomb. Not by overpowering it, but by understanding where it came from. That's emotional intelligence in action. That's the quiet superpower you don't always see in movies, but it changes lives. And the coolest part, you don't have to work so hard at it. It comes from lived experience, from the losses you've survived, from the conversations you've regretted, from the times you blew up and learned, yeah, that wasn't worth it. All of that adds up. That's your training ground. And the next time someone younger says, "I wish I could handle things like you do," just smile. Because they'll get there too. And you're already living in that season, where everything's not a crisis, where emotions don't control you, you just let them pass through. You didn't lose your edge, you gained your balance. And that might matter more than any degree, any promotion, any personality test. Emotional intelligence is the kind of wisdom people don't always notice right away. But when they feel it, they remember it.
Novelty is neuroprotective. Let's talk about your brain for a second. Not the IQ part, not the memory part, the part that just stays alive and sharp. Want to know one of the weirdest things that helps? Doing stuff you've never done before. Seriously, trying something new, even something small, is like brain fertilizer. It's not just good for your mood or your sense of adventure. It actually protects your brain from aging. There's a name for this. Novelty is neuroprotective, which is a fancy way of saying new stuff helps your brain stay young. And that sounds almost too simple, right? Like, how could going to a new coffee shop or learning how to use chopsticks help with brain health? But it does. It really does. Here's why. Your brain is constantly trying to conserve energy. It loves routines. It loves habits. It loves doing the same thing the same way because that uses the least amount of mental fuel. So once your life gets into a groove, wake up, same breakfast, same drive, same emails, same Netflix shows, your brain goes into energy saving mode, like it's on cruise control. And yeah, that's efficient, but it's not stimulating. And if your brain isn't being challenged regularly, it starts pruning things. Literally. It starts letting go of connections it's not using anymore. And over time, that's when decline creeps in. Now, here's the good news. Your brain is incredibly plastic. That means it can change and grow, even in your 50s, 60s, and beyond. But the trick is, you have to shake it up. Doing something novel, like taking a different route home, trying a weird new recipe, or signing up for a class you know nothing about, tells your brain, hey, stay alert. This is unfamiliar. We're learning again. And when that happens, your brain starts laying down new neural connections. It gets stronger, more flexible, more adaptable. Basically, the more novelty you feed it, the less likely it is to wither. And no, this doesn't mean you have to go skydiving or move to another country. Small things count, like brushing your teeth with the opposite hand, listening to music in a genre you normally avoid, reading a book outside your usual comfort zone, talking to someone from a completely different generation, eating at a restaurant where you don't recognize a single thing on the menu. Every time you do that, your brain lights up, not with stress, but with curiosity, with engagement. Want to know something wild? There are studies on older adults who start learning new things, like quilting, photography, or even juggling. And within months, they show improvements in memory, attention, and even brain volume. Yeah,
Learning to juggle can literally change your brain shape because it's not about what you're learning. It's the act of learning, the novelty, the challenge. That's magic. Now, here's why this matters even more in your 50s. This is the decade where a lot of people start settling, not emotionally, but behaviorally. They find that routines, their comfort zones, their "this is how I do things" settings, and it's comfortable until it's not. Because when everything stays the same, the brain starts coasting. And when the brain coasts for too long, it starts slipping. But if you keep injecting novelty into your life, even in small, playful ways, your brain doesn't get that chance. It stays alert. It stays flexible. It stays alive. Think of it like this. Your brain is a muscle, and novelty is the workout. Sure, you could do the same exercise every day, and that's fine. But eventually, your progress plateaus. But if you mix it up, add new moves, new weights, new challenges, that's when things really start to improve. Same with your brain. So if you're wondering whether it's worth it to start painting, or pick up a language app, or finally learn how to play that guitar in the corner, the answer is yes. Not because it'll make you smarter, but because it keeps your brain active. And you don't have to be good at it. That's actually the best part. Struggling with something new, fumbling, laughing, getting frustrated, that's where the magic happens. That's your brain working out. So yeah, novelty is neuroprotective. And in your 50s, that might be one of the most powerful and fun things you can give yourself. Try something weird this week. Surprise your brain.
Your brain processes slower but makes better judgments. So, you walk into a room and completely forget why. You stare at the microwave, waiting for your coffee to reheat even though you forgot to press the button. Or you're in a conversation and someone's name, someone you definitely know, just vanishes mid-sentence. And part of you thinks, oh no, my brain's slowing down. Is this the beginning of the end? Not even close. Yes, your brain is slowing down in some ways, but here's the twist most people don't hear enough. It's also getting smarter, wiser, sharper in a different way. Here's what's really happening. When you're younger, your brain is like a Formula One car, quick to accelerate, always ready to react. You can memorize stuff fast, come up with clever responses in seconds. But in your 50s, that speed dials down a little. You might need a few more seconds to recall a word or switch between tasks. But here's the wild part. While your reaction time slows, your judgment gets better. Why? Because the older brain starts relying more on something called crystallized intelligence, which is just a fancy term for everything you've learned, seen, felt, and survived. It's not about speed anymore. It's about wisdom. It's about seeing the big picture. Not just what's the right answer, but what's the right thing to do. Let me give you an example. Imagine a 25-year-old and a 55-year-old both managing a crisis at work. The 25-year-old might react faster, maybe even more energetically. But the 55-year-old, they pause. They scan the situation. They weigh people's feelings, past experiences, timing, outcomes, all in this quiet, behind-the-scenes way. And the solution they offer? It's usually calmer, more effective, and more long-term. That's not slowness, that's depth. See, younger brains tend to jump to conclusions. They operate more on impulse and trial and error. But the older brain, it uses patterns. It references history. It's like, wait, we've been here before. This isn't just about facts. This is about nuance.
This is why people in their 50s and beyond often make better financial decisions, better moral choices, and more stable leadership calls, even if they're not the fastest ones in the meeting room. It's the difference between speed and substance. Now, let's talk about science for a second. The part of your brain responsible for quick processing, called fluid intelligence, does decline with age. That's normal, but the part that stores knowledge, skills, social cues, emotional learning, that actually holds steady and can even get stronger. You're pulling from a deeper library now. So yeah, maybe you don't remember someone's name right away, but you do remember how they made you feel. You remember how similar conversations played out. You remember what worked and what didn't 20 years ago, 10 years ago, yesterday. And that becomes your superpower. Also, your brain starts caring less about unimportant things. It's more selective. You don't waste as much brain power worrying about status or winning every argument or chasing every trend. You're filtering better, prioritizing better. That's not a flaw, that's maturity. Think about how you might have reacted to a big decision in your 20s. Maybe you asked 12 friends for advice. Maybe you changed your mind 3 times. Maybe you acted on a gut feeling and dealt with the chaos later. But now, you probably pause, sleep on it. You think about timing, context, the ripple effects. And most of the time, your gut is wiser now. Not just instinct, but experience turned into intuition. Sure, you may not be the fastest texter in the group chat. You might take a second longer to solve a puzzle. But when it comes to making decisions that matter, whether in relationships, work, or your own health, you're probably making some of the best calls of your life. And that's the trade-off people don't talk about enough. You lose a little speed and gain a whole lot of clarity. So the next time you can't remember why you opened the fridge, laugh. That's normal. That's just noise. Because when the big stuff shows up, the hard conversations, the unexpected setbacks, the moments that really define who you are, that's when your brain steps up. Not with speed, but with strength. And honestly, that matters more.
Sleep architecture changes. All right, let's talk about something that starts to get weird in your 50s. Sleep. Yeah, sleep. That thing you used to do effortlessly in your 20s, like flopping into bed at 2 a.m. after a movie and waking up at 10 feeling totally fine. Whoosh, gone. That version of sleep is like an old friend who doesn't call anymore. But here's the thing. It's not just that you're getting older or more stressed, though sure, those play a part. There's actually a whole behind-the-scenes remodeling going on in your brain. It's called a change in sleep architecture. And it happens naturally as you age, especially once you hit your 50s. So what does that mean? Okay, imagine your night's sleep is like a multi-storied building. You start on the ground floor, light sleep. Then you go deeper into the middle floors. That's your deep sleep. And then you cycle up to the top floor, REM sleep, where all the crazy dreams happen. Throughout the night, you ride the elevator up and down between these floors over and over again. That's a normal sleep cycle. But in your 50s, the building starts to change. The deep sleep floors shrink. The elevator gets a little glitchy, and you spend more time stuck on the light sleep floors, tossing, turning, waking up for no reason at 3:12 a.m., staring at the ceiling, wondering if this is just how it is now. And honestly, it kind of is. Not because anything's wrong, but because your brain is shifting how it sleeps. Hormones like melatonin, which helps you feel sleepy, and growth hormone, which supports deep sleep, start to decline. Your internal body clock, your circadian rhythm, starts pushing you toward earlier bedtimes and earlier wake-ups. And the result? you're more likely to wake up during the night. You may sleep less overall. And even when you do get 7 or 8 hours, it doesn't feel as restorative. Now, here's the good news. This doesn't mean you're broken or doomed. It just means you're not sleeping like a 25-year-old anymore, and your expectations might need a little updating. Because guess what? Even though your deep sleep stages shrink, your brain finds ways to compensate. It becomes more efficient with the deep sleep it does get. Your body starts adapting. It gets a little smarter about where it puts its recovery time. But, and this is the part most people don't realize, you have to work a little harder to protect your sleep now. Like, in your younger years, you could drink coffee at 5 p.m., scroll on your phone till midnight, and still pass out cold. Now, that same routine might leave you staring at the ceiling with your heart beating like you ran a mile, because your brain is more sensitive now, less forgiving of chaos, and more reliant on consistency. So, what does that mean in real life? It means sleep hygiene matters more than ever. It means keeping a stable bedtime, yes, even on weekends. It means dimming the lights earlier, cutting back on screens, and maybe not eating a giant plate of pasta at 9:30 p.m. Not because you're fragile, but because your brain is doing something new now, something slower, softer, more deliberate. Also, and this is big, sleep isn't just about energy anymore. It's about brain health. Sleep is when your brain clears out waste products, including things linked to Alzheimer's. It's when your memories get processed and stored. It's when your emotional system gets reset. So yeah, that rough night where you wake up feeling foggy and weirdly emotional the next day, that's not just in your head. It's in your brain's literal wiring. And here's something almost no one ever hears. You don't actually need the same kind of sleep at 50 that you did at 20. You need quality over quantity. You need sleep that matches what your brain needs now, and that might look different than it used to. It might mean you wake up early but feel more grounded. It might mean you take short power naps now and then. It might mean learning to accept that 6.5 hours of solid good sleep is better than 8 hours of tossing and turning. So if you're in your 50s and wondering, why can't I sleep like I used to? The answer is because you're not who you used to be. And that's not bad. That's just evolution. Your sleep is shifting to match the rest of your life. More reflection, more processing, a little less chaos, a little more care. So yeah, sleep architecture changes, but it doesn't collapse. It was just remodeled. You're not sleeping wrong. You're just sleeping differently. And honestly, that's exactly what your brain needs. Muscle loss accelerates sarcopenia. So, real talk. Have you ever looked in the mirror and thought, wait, where did my arms go? Or tried lifting something you used to lift easily, like a full grocery bag or your grandkid, and felt your body go, nope, not today? That's not in your head. It's not just getting older. It's something real, something sneaky, and something that kicks in right around your 50s. It's called sarcopenia, and it's basically your body's way of saying, hey, we're going to start losing muscle now. Good work. But hold on. Let's not panic. Let's break it down. Sarcopenia is the gradual loss of muscle mass and strength as you age. And guess when it really starts to speed up? In your 50s. Yep, that's the decade when the muscle breakdown starts outpacing the muscle building, unless you do something about it. Now, to be clear, we're not talking about bodybuilder muscles here. This isn't about having six-pack abs or bulging biceps. This is about functional muscle, The stuff that helps you get off the floor, carry your grocery bags, walk upstairs, open jars, and just live your life without needing a helping hand every 5 minutes. Muscle isn't just about strength, it's about independence. And the body, it treats muscle like an optional luxury when you're not actively using it. If you stop challenging it, it starts disappearing, quietly, slowly, and permanently. And it's not just the visible stuff. Even your muscle quality declines, meaning the fibers get weaker, less efficient. The signal from your brain to your body gets slower. The muscle you do have doesn't respond as well. This is why so many people in their 50s start feeling a little weaker, a little more tired. You go up one flight of stairs and suddenly feel like you ran a marathon. Your balance feels off. You notice you can't squat down without groaning or leaning on something to get back up. That's sarcopenia sneaking in. But here's the good news. You can fight it, and you don't need a gym membership or a CrossFit coach to do it. Muscle is super responsive, even in your 50s, 60s, and beyond, if you ask it to show up. And asking it doesn't mean lifting heavy weights or doing anything extreme. It just means giving your muscles a reason to stay, like doing bodyweight squats while brushing your teeth, carrying heavy grocery bags instead of using a cart, taking the stairs, standing up from a chair without using your hands, holding a plank for 20 seconds a day. Yes, 20 seconds counts. These things seem small, but they add up. They signal to your body, hey, we still need this strength. Don't let it go. And let's be real. If you don't actively resist sarcopenia, you're not just losing muscle, you're also losing metabolism. Muscle burns more calories than fat, even at rest. So as muscle drops, your metabolism slows. That's one reason people in their 50s start gaining weight even if they're eating the same way they always have. Also, and this one's big, less muscle means higher risk of falls and fractures. You don't bounce back the way you did in your 20s. One bad fall in your 50s or 60s can seriously change your life trajectory. Muscle is your built-in armor. And we haven't even mentioned the connection between muscle and your brain. Yep, research shows that people who maintain muscle as they age also have better cognitive function. Why? Because strength training increases blood flow to the brain. It reduces inflammation. It improves mood. It's like a full-body tune-up. So yeah, sarcopenia is real. It's not a myth. And it accelerates in your 50s, which means this is the exact time to pay attention. But the solution? It's not scary. It's not expensive. It's not even complicated. You just have to move. Push, pull, squat, carry. Remind your body what strength feels like. You don't have to get shredded. You just have to stay capable. Because the truth is, muscle is one of those use it or lose it things. And in your 50s, the clock doesn't tick, it accelerates. But every time you move, you slow it down. So if you're wondering what actually matters right now, muscle. Not just for looking good in a t-shirt, but for living well with freedom, confidence, and power for decades to come.
VO2 max decline is predictive of lifespan. Okay, so let's start with a weird but true idea. If there was one single number that could predict how long you're likely to live, better than your cholesterol levels, your blood pressure, even your weight, would you want to know what it is? Nope, it's not your bank account, it's not your BMI, it's something called VO2 max. And trust me, even if that sounds like some fancy gym tech thing you'd see on a smartwatch, it's actually way more important than most people realize. So here's the deal. VO2 max is basically how much oxygen your body can use during intense exercise. That's it. It stands for Volume of Oxygen Maximum, and it tells you how efficiently your heart, lungs, and muscles work together when you're pushing your body. Think of it like your engine size. The higher your VO2 max, the better your body is at delivering oxygen where it's needed, burning energy, and handling physical stress. And guess what? Once you hit your 50s, that number starts to drop, like clockwork. Now here's where things get wild. Studies have shown that people with higher VO2 max scores, even in their 50s, 60s, and beyond, tend to live longer. And not just longer in that technically still breathing kind of way. Longer with better quality of life. More energy, fewer hospital visits, fewer chronic diseases. It's such a strong predictor that one massive study found cardiorespiratory fitness, aka VO2 max, was more important for survival than whether or not someone had high blood pressure, diabetes, or even a history of smoking. Let that sink in for a second. So yeah, this number matters. But don't worry, you don't need to go to a sports lab or strap on a mask like an astronaut to figure it out. You don't even need to measure your VO2 max directly to know how you're doing. Because here's the truth. If you're out of breath walking up a hill, if you feel like your heart is racing after a few minutes of light activity, if you avoid stairs because they wipe you out, that's your VO2 max talking. And if you never challenge it, if you let your body coast through every day without making it work a little, your VO2 max just drops. Quietly. Predictably. That decline gets steeper after 50, and unless you interrupt it, it keeps going. But the amazing part, you can raise your VO2 max, even in midlife, even in your 60s and 70s. You don't need to be a runner or a cyclist. You don't need to train for a triathlon. You just need to do something that gets your heart pumping a little harder than usual, even if it's just brisk walking for 20 minutes a day, dancing in your kitchen, taking stairs 2 at a time, yes, even slowly, doing jumping jacks during commercial breaks, playing tag with your grandkids, gardening like you mean it. The trick is to occasionally do something that makes you breathe harder. Not so much that you're dying, just enough that you're working. Because every time you challenge your cardiovascular system, even just a little, you're giving it a reminder. Hey, we still use this body. Don't fall apart on me yet.
And the reward? You're not just building stamina. You're not just burning calories. You're literally increasing your body's lifespan capacity. Let me say that again. The better your body is at using oxygen, the longer you're likely to live, with strength, clarity, and mobility intact. So yeah, VO2 max is a sciencey term, but it's really just a way of saying, how well does your body handle life? And in your 50s, it becomes one of the clearest signs of how you're aging on the inside. It's not about how fast you are. It's not about how thin you are. It's about how efficiently your engine is still running. You can't stop time, but you can upgrade the engine. One walk, one breath, one hill at a time. So next time you feel a little winded, don't be discouraged. Be curious. Be proud. Because even that moment is part of your body remembering how to live longer.
Bone density dips drastically after 50. So let's talk about something you probably haven't thought about in a while. Your bones. Yep, bones. Not exactly the most thrilling topic, right? I mean, they're just there, holding you up. Quiet, solid, not demanding attention. You don't really feel them doing their job. And that's part of the problem. Because by the time you hit your 50s, especially if you're a woman, your bones start making some sneaky moves behind the scenes, and not in a good way. Let's break it down.
Pun intended. Your bones aren't just hard sticks inside your body. They're actually living tissue, and they're constantly being broken down and rebuilt in a process called remodeling. Think of it like a slow-motion construction crew. Tear down a little here, patch up a little there, over and over. Now, up until around age 30, your bones are winning that battle. They're building more than they're losing. You're hitting your peak bone mass, like your skeleton's version of its prime. But after that, especially in your 50s, the builders start slacking off. The demolition crew, they're still working full-time. In fact, they might even be working overtime. So your bones start to lose density. They become more porous, more fragile, more likely to crack under pressure. This is called osteopenia if it's mild, and osteoporosis when it gets serious. Now, here's where it gets scary. Most people don't know it's happening because it doesn't hurt. You don't feel your bones thinning. You don't get little alerts from your knees saying, "Hey, we're losing structure over here." Instead, one day, you trip on a rug, or step off a curb weird, or try to catch yourself when you fall, and snap. You break a wrist, or a hip, or a vertebra, and you're sitting there going, "Wait, what? I didn't even fall that hard." That's the sneaky part. They call it a silent disease for a reason. And here's the kicker. For women, this whole process speeds up big time after menopause. Estrogen, that hormone you hear about in every menopause conversation, plays a big role in keeping bones strong. When estrogen drops, bone loss accelerates, like rapidly. In fact, women can lose up to 20% of their bone density in the 5 to 7 years after menopause. That's huge. Men aren't completely off the hook either. They lose bone mass too, just more slowly. But for women, especially petite women or those with the family history of osteoporosis, the risk skyrockets in your 50s. So, what does that mean for you? Are you just doomed to become brittle? No, not at all. But you do need to stop treating your bones like background characters. You need to remember they're alive. They're listening, and they respond to what you do. For starters, and this is big, bones love pressure. When you put weight on them, like walking, lifting, climbing stairs, dancing, they get the signal to rebuild. No pressure, no rebuild. So sitting at a desk all day, driving everywhere, lounging on the couch every evening, that's like telling your bones, we don't really need you to be strong anymore. Weight-bearing exercise is key. You don't need to hit the gym like a bodybuilder, but you do need to move. Walk, hike, do yoga, carry groceries, lift light weights, take the stairs, do squats while brushing your teeth. And yes, calcium and vitamin D matter, but here's the twist. Popping supplements doesn't always do the trick. You need absorption, and that means getting enough magnesium too. And yes, sunshine helps with the vitamin D part, so don't hide from it all the time. Oh, and protein? Your bones need that too. They're not just made of minerals, they have a protein matrix, kind of like rebar in concrete. So if you're on a super low protein diet, not doing your bones any favors. Also, watch out for bone thieves, things that drain your bone strength. Excess alcohol, smoking, soda, especially cola. Something about the phosphoric acid messes with your calcium balance. And, surprise, certain medications like steroids can also speed up bone loss. But here's the hopeful part. Even in your 50s, even post-menopause, even if your bones are already a little weakened, they can still respond. They can still strengthen. They're just slower now. Like an older dog who still wants to play, just not chase tennis balls for hours. So check in with your doctor. A DEXA scan can measure your bone density and give you a clearer picture. It's painless, quick, and honestly,
Way more informative than half the tests we get offered. Because listen, your bones may be quiet, but they're not passive. They're paying attention to what you eat, to how you move, to how often you challenge them. And if you give them the right signals, they'll keep holding you up strong for decades to come. Silent doesn't mean powerless, and fragile doesn't mean inevitable. You've just got to remember, even in your 50s, you're still building things, especially the stuff that holds you together.
Your immune system rewires. All right, let's get into something your body is doing behind the scenes right now that you probably haven't heard much about unless you hang out with immunologists for fun. It's called immunosenescence. And yeah, I know, it sounds like something out of a dystopian sci-fi movie, like a virus that takes over an AI or some weird malfunction in a cloning experiment. But nope, it's just your body doing what it does best, adapting and aging. So here's the deal. When you hit your 50s, your immune system starts changing. Not in an obvious, dramatic way, but in subtle shifts that matter a lot. And this change is part of a natural process. But just because it's natural doesn't mean it's harmless. Let's rewind a bit. Your immune system is your body's defense squad. It's the one running 24/7 surveillance, looking for invaders, bacteria, viruses, even mutated cells that could turn into cancer. And for the most part, it does a pretty fantastic job, especially when you're younger. But over time, your immune system gets tired. Not lazy, just worn down. Experienced, but not quite as sharp. That's immunosenescence, the aging of your immune system. And it doesn't mean your immune system disappears. It's still there, still fighting, still keeping you alive. But it starts to do it in a slightly disorganized way, like a security team that used to be elite and is now more like, wait, where's the intruder again? Should we sound the alarm or have lunch first? One big shift is with your T cells, the white blood cells that act like snipers. They target and kill infected cells and also help coordinate the whole immune response. As you get older, your body stops producing as many new T cells. Instead, your immune system leans on the same experienced T cells it's already got. Sounds okay, right? Is experience good? Sure, until you meet a new virus. Then it's like sending a team of Cold War spies into a modern cyber war. They're brave, they're trained, but they weren't built for this. That's why in your 50s and beyond, you're more susceptible to new infections, especially ones your body hasn't seen before. Your system's memory bank is full, but the training ground for new recruits is kind of shutting down. And it doesn't stop there. Vaccines? You may have noticed they don't work quite as well anymore. That's not because the vaccine is weaker, it's because your immune system doesn't respond with the same intensity. It's slower to build protection, slower to remember. And that's why adults over 50 are often advised to get boosters, not just to top off protection, but to give your immune system a few more practice rounds. Now here's the part that makes things even trickier. Aging doesn't just weaken your immune system, it also confuses it. Some parts get sluggish, other parts become too active. Inflammation ramps up even when there's no real threat. This is called inflammaging. Yeah, another word that sounds made up, but it's very real. Basically, your immune system starts setting off little inflammation fires for no good reason. Low-grade, chronic, background-level inflammation. Not enough to feel like the flu,
but enough to mess with your tissues, joints, heart, even your brain over time. Ever feel more sore than you used to? Take longer to recover from a cold? Catch bugs more easily from your grandkids? That's immunosenescence in action. Not dramatic, not deadly on its own, just wearing you down bit by bit. Now here's the good news. You're not powerless. There's a huge difference between inevitable aging and accelerated aging, and the way you live your life plays a massive role. So what can you do? First, get moving. Physical activity is one of the strongest immune boosters you can control. It keeps inflammation in check and helps your immune cells stay agile. You don't need to train like an Olympian. Just walk, stretch, lift something occasionally. Get your heart rate up. Your immune system notices. Second, eat like your cells depend on it, because they do. Think fiber, healthy fats, fruits and vegetables, fermented foods, less sugar, less ultra-processed junk. This kind of diet keeps your gut happy, and your gut is actually a huge part of your immune system. In fact, over 70% of your immune cells live in your gut. And third, sleep. Yes, again with sleep. We always come back to it. Your body repairs itself while you sleep, including your immune defenses. And disrupted or shallow sleep, it lowers your ability to fight off viruses and ramps up inflammation. Also, don't ignore your mental health. Chronic stress is like an immune system saboteur. It sends the wrong signals, distracts your defense team, and keeps the inflammatory faucet running. Meditation, laughter, therapy, walks in nature, whatever brings you down from the ledge, use it. It's not just about feeling better, it's biological. Lastly, and this is underrated, stay social. Isolation in your 50s and beyond actually hurts your immune function. Being around others, even if it's virtual, it challenges your brain, boosts mood, and helps regulate immune response. Your biology wants community. Don't ignore that instinct. So, yeah, your immune system isn't the same as it was when you were 20, but that doesn't mean it's broken. It just means it's different. Wiser, yes. Slower, sure, but still yours to work with. Think of it like driving an older car. You learn to listen to it. Take care of it. Don't push it too hard on cold mornings. And in return, it'll keep showing up for you, even when the roads get rough. You're not just aging, you're adapting. And your immune system is doing the best it can with what it got.
Grip strength is a mortality predictor. Let me ask you something weird. When was the last time you squeezed something? Like, really squeezed it? A jar lid? A stress ball? Someone's hand in a handshake? Seems random, right? But here's the crazy point. That grip, your ability to just squeeze something with your hand, might be one of the most powerful indicators of how long you're going to live. No joke. It's actually backed with research. Scientists have found that grip strength is one of the best predictors of mortality, better than blood pressure in some cases, better than cholesterol, better than BMI. Just how hard you can squeeze something. That little test, the one where you grab a device and it measures your hand strength, it might seem like a gimmick, but doctors and researchers take it very seriously, especially after 50. So what's the connection? Why does your grip matter so much? It's not because your hands are magic or anything. It's because your grip is like a window into your overall muscle function, nervous system health, coordination, and, get this, even your heart and brain condition. Let's break that down a bit. To squeeze something hard, your body has to pull off a team effort.
Your brain has to send the right signal, your nerves have to carry it to your hand, your muscles and tendons need to respond, your circulatory system needs to supply energy and oxygen. In other words, it's not just a hand movement, it's a full body health check in disguise. And if you're in your 50s, this gets especially relevant. See, muscle mass and strength start declining naturally as we age. The process is called sarcopenia, which we'll probably talk about elsewhere. But the hands often show early signs. A weaker grip can be one of the first clues that strength loss is happening everywhere else, even if you don't feel it yet. But it's not only about muscle. Studies have linked lower grip strength with higher risks of heart disease, stroke, cognitive decline, depression, and even a higher risk of death from all causes. It's not that weak hands cause those things, but they signal something deeper going on, like poor circulation, reduced nerve function, lower physical resilience, and less muscle mass overall. It's like your body is whispering, hey, something's off here. Now, here's the best part. It's fixable. Grip strength isn't some fixed trait like your height or eye color. You can improve it. And improving it, even slightly, can have ripple effects for the rest of your health. Lifting weights works. Hanging from a bar for 10 seconds works. Even wringing out towels by hand or squeezing therapy balls, that helps too. It's not about turning into a bodybuilder. It's about staying connected to your body's core systems. Here's a little secret. Your grip is sneaky smart. It's a reflection of your nervous system efficiency, your vascular strength, your mobility, and your daily habits. People who walk more, eat better, sleep well, and stay active tend to also have stronger grips. Not because they're training their hands, but because their whole body is just working better. And here's a little extra weirdness. There's evidence that grip strength is correlated with cognitive performance, like memory, reaction time, and attention span. Your hand and your brain, totally in sync. Why? Because your motor function, the way you move, and your executive function, the way you think, are tightly connected in the brain. So when your grip weakens, it's sometimes a hint that other things upstairs might need attention too. In fact, researchers have found that in people over 50, a drop in grip strength often precedes noticeable declines in thinking skills. It's like an early warning system your body built in and you didn't even realize it. Now, let's be real. No one is walking around measuring their grip daily. You don't have to. But if you're in your 50s and you want a quick check-in with your own biology, try it. Squeeze something. See how it feels. Could you hang from a bar for even 10 seconds? Could you open the stuck jar without hurting your wrist? Could you shake someone's hand with confidence? If the answer is, maybe not, don't panic, but maybe take it as a nudge. Because your hands, they're kind of like messengers. They don't lie. They carry your age in them. And sometimes they whisper things before the rest of your body catches on.
Midlife depression can be misinterpreted as just fatigue. Let's talk about something sneaky. You wake up a little tired. You don't feel like doing much. Work feels heavier than usual. You skip that evening walk because you're just worn out, right? Totally normal. You're busy, you're older. That's just life, yeah? But here's the twist. What if that fatigue you're brushing off isn't actually tiredness? What if it's depression and you just don't recognize it? Now, before you roll your eyes and think, nah, I'm just low energy, not sad, hear me out. Midlife depression, especially after 50, doesn't always look like sadness. That whole stereotype, weepy, emotional, dramatic, is way off the mark for a lot of adults. Instead, it shows up like this: low motivation,
feeling blah or disinterested, trouble concentrating, irritability, less joy in things you used to enjoy, and yeah, just feeling constantly tired. And it's often misdiagnosed. It's just burnout or aging or I've been working too hard. But here's the wild part. Researchers have found that a large number of adults over 50 are dealing with low-grade, undiagnosed depression, and they don't even know it. Not because they're ignoring it, but because it wears a totally different mask. They're not crying into their cereal. They're just zoning out more, napping more, avoiding plans, not caring much either way. And if that sounds familiar, it might not just be getting older. It might be something deeper. Now, why does this happen in your 50s? A bunch of reasons. First, let's be real. Midlife can be emotionally brutal. You're juggling aging parents, your kids are grown and maybe leaving the house. Your body's changing in weird ways. You're questioning your career, your relationships, your identity. It's a whole invisible storm happening under the surface. And for some people, this storm messes with brain chemistry. Serotonin, dopamine, cortisol, all those mood-related chemicals start acting a little weird. Your sleep shifts, your hormones shift, your outlook shifts. But instead of saying, hey, I think I'm depressed, most people just say, man, I'm tired all the time. Because that feels more acceptable, more manageable. But here's the thing. Ignoring it doesn't make it go away. And labeling it as just fatigue means you might never get the kind of help that actually works. And you know what else makes this tricky? You're functional. You go to work, you pay bills, you show up. So you tell yourself, I can't be depressed, I'm getting stuff done. But that's the trap. High-functioning depression is a real thing. And it's sneaky because from the outside, everything looks fine. But inside, you're running on fumes. You're disconnected. You're kind of just going through the motions. Here's a quick self-check that might raise an eyebrow. Have you stopped looking forward to things you used to enjoy? Do you constantly feel like you need a nap even after sleeping all night? Are you more irritable or numb than usual? Do you dread even simple tasks? Have you found yourself saying, I'm just tired way too often? Because here's the sciencey part. Fatigue and depression are biologically linked. Low mood affects your energy. Low energy makes your mood worse. It's a feedback loop. And after 50, your body isn't as resilient. So those dips hit harder. What used to be a meh day now becomes a string of weeks that feel gray. But here's the good news. This is not the end of your story. Mild to moderate depression is incredibly common and treatable. Sometimes it's talk therapy. Sometimes it's a simple medication tweak. Sometimes it's changing routines, eating better, walking outside every morning, or just finally admitting, hey, I'm not just tired. Something's off. Because naming it, that's the first step towards feeling like yourself again. And if you're not sure where to start, just talk to someone. It doesn't have to be a therapist right away. Talk to your doctor, your partner, your friend. Just say, I think this might be more than being tired all the time. There's strength in that. There's clarity in that. And who knows, maybe what feels like fatigue today is just your mind quietly asking for a little more attention.
Regret peaks in your early 50s. Let's talk about one of the most underestimated emotional roller coasters of midlife. Regret. Yeah, that thing that creeps in late at night when you're brushing your teeth, staring in the mirror, wondering, should I have chosen a different job? Why didn't I spend more time with my kids? Was that relationship worth it? Did I waste too much time trying to please everyone? It's not just you. There's actual research showing that regret tends to spike in your early 50s. Right around the time you're supposed to be figuring things out is when many people are secretly asking, what the heck have I done with my life? And guess what? That spike, it's completely normal. There's a psychological reason for it, and it's not about being overly sensitive or overthinking things. It's about life structure. Here's what's going on under the hood. In your 20s and 30s, your brain is full of optimism and possibility. You still got time to change careers, move across the country, start something new, fall in love again. Your future is a big open road. But by your early 50s, that road starts to feel narrower. You've made choices. You've walked away from others. And you realize, often for the first time, that not everything is still on the table. It's a moment where life switches from expansion to evaluation, and that's when regret sneaks in. Not always big dramatic regrets like, I should have become an astronaut, more like subtle, personal ones. Not calling your parents more, staying too long at a job that didn't inspire you, letting friendships fade away, playing it safe when you want to take a risk. These are what psychologists call regrets of inaction, and they hurt more than the stuff you did because they represent the life you could have lived. But here's the beautiful part, and it's why this topic matters. Most people who go through this spike in regret don't get stuck in it. In fact, studies show that by your late 50s and into your 60s, that regret fades. Not because you suddenly fix everything, but because your brain and your heart start to shift towards something deeper. Acceptance. You start realizing, hey, I made the best choices I could with what I had at the time. You stop chasing impossible timelines. You stop comparing your path to everyone else's highlight reel. And you get better, shockingly better, at finding meaning in what you already have. It's not a resignation. It's a relief. A letting go of the weight of what if, and leaning into the freedom of what now. You become more present, more forgiving of yourself, more aware that time is precious, and regret, while informative, doesn't have to run the show. So yeah, regret peaks in your early 50s. It can feel heavy, confusing, and even a little scary. But if you sit with it, just sit with it, it starts to teach you something valuable. Not just about the past, but about how you want to spend the rest of your life. You can't go back and rewrite your story, but you can decide how the next chapter feels. And maybe that's the real gift of this phase. You stop chasing perfection and start chasing peace.
You become more sensitive to loneliness. So here's something weirdly sneaky that happens after you hit 50. Loneliness starts hitting differently. Like, not just I feel a little left out different, more like your body literally starts to treat loneliness as a threat, a biological stressor. Kind of like how your brain reacts to hunger or pain or lack of sleep. Which might sound dramatic, but here's the science. As we age, our nervous system changes, our immune system shifts, and our ability to bounce back emotionally isn't quite what it used to be in our 20s and 30s. So when we're socially disconnected, whether it's because of retirement, divorce, kids moving out, or just losing touch with old friends, the impact isn't just emotional. It shows up in the body. Your cortisol levels spike, which means your body's running in stress mode. Your blood pressure can creep up, You may even have a harder time sleeping, healing from illness, or regulating your mood. It's like your biology is saying, "Hey, where is everybody? We're not supposed to do this alone." And evolutionarily, that makes sense. Back in caveman times, being isolated wasn't just sad. It was dangerous. You needed a group to survive. So our brains evolved to treat disconnection as an alarm bell, a signal to reconnect, rejoin the group, seek out safety. Now fast forward to your 50s, and that wiring is still in place, but life looks really different. People move away. You're not automatically surrounded by coworkers every day. Friendships that were once effortless now take actual effort. And it's very easy, shockingly easy, to slowly drift into a kind of low-grade, silent isolation. And here's the trickiest part. It doesn't always feel like loneliness at first. Sometimes it just feels like fatigue, or not really in the mood, or I don't want to bother anyone, or I'm too busy. But under the surface, your brain and body might be missing a real connection. Not a scroll through social media, not a group chat with the family, but eye contact, laughter, being heard, touch, real time with real people. And when you don't get that biological stress response kicks in, and over time, it can snowball, affecting everything from heart health to immune strength to memory and even lifespan. Yeah, loneliness can actually shorten your life. It's that serious. But here's the hopeful part. You don't need a huge social circle. You don't need to be the life of the party or host dinner every weekend. What your body is really craving is quality, not quantity. One or two meaningful connections, people you trust, people who get you, people who check in and show up. That's often enough to dial down the alarm bells. And even better, it's never too late to start rebuilding those connections. Some of the most powerful, deep, and healing friendships happen after 50. Because by now, people are more honest, less interested in showing off, more focused on what matters, and far more open to reconnecting, even if it's been years. So if you're in your 50s and you feel that twinge of loneliness, don't ignore it. That's not just your mind missing someone. That's your body asking for community. Reach out. Send the text. Make the call. Say yes to the coffee invite. You don't need to be surrounded. You just need to be seen.
Death anxiety emerges subtly. Have you ever had one of those days where you suddenly feel the urge to organize all your old photos? Or you start replaying memories you haven't thought about in decades? Or maybe you find yourself randomly Googling retirement homes or looking up how to make a will, even though you feel totally fine. That is not weird. That might actually be something called subtle death anxiety. Now, don't panic. This isn't some spooky doom and gloom thing. It's not about being morbid or walking around thinking you're about to die. It's more like this quiet, creeping awareness that starts showing up after 50. Your body feels mostly okay. Your life might even be in a great place. But somewhere deep in your brain, this timer starts blinking. And it doesn't shout. It whispers. It whispers things like, better get your affairs in order. Better make this trip now before it's too late. Better spend more time with the kids while he still can. But instead of showing obvious fear, it shows up sideways,
like restlessness. Like you suddenly need to be doing something, fixing something. Like you're bouncing between hobbies or obsessing over the perfect way to plan your next vacation, or feeling weirdly irritated that you haven't used your time better. It can also look like nostalgia overload. Old songs hit harder. You dig through yearbooks or scroll through your phone and linger on pictures from a decade ago. Even old regrets, stuff you thought you were over, might start popping back up again. And here's the kicker. None of this means something's wrong. This is actually incredibly normal. In fact, it's wired into us. Psychologists have a name for this shift: terror management theory. Yeah, dramatic name, but it basically says, once you're old enough to understand that life is finite, really understand it, not just intellectually, you start doing things to protect your mind from that reality, not by running away from death, but by chasing meaning, legacy, control, order, purpose. So that's why in your 50s, you might suddenly feel this huge urge to downsize your stuff, or create a scrapbook, or get serious about writing that book you've been putting off for 20 years, or even go a little overboard with planning, retirement spreadsheets, bucket lists, funeral arrangements, the works. It's not because you're being morbid. It's because your brain is trying to process time differently. It's trying to leave a trail behind. It's trying to make peace with the idea that the road ahead is shorter than the road behind. And honestly, that can be weirdly beautiful. Because with that awareness comes clarity. You stop sweating the small stuff as much. You start prioritizing what really matters. You let go of nonsense drama. You don't waste energy trying to impress people you don't even like. You start doing things because they feel meaningful, not just because they're productive or expected or Instagram-worthy. And the best part, that subtle anxiety, it doesn't last forever. Most people describe this phase as a tunnel, not a permanent state. You move through it. You grow through it, and on the other side is often a kind of peace you never had in your 30s or 40s. So if you find yourself overly nostalgic or obsessively planning or just feeling a little off in ways you can't quite name, maybe pause and ask, is this me? Or is this just my brain trying to make sense of time? And if it is, that's okay. You're not weird. You're not broken. You're just awake to something most people spend their whole lives trying to ignore.
Happiness might start increasing again. Okay, so here's a plot twist most people don't see coming. You know how the world kind of pushes this idea that the older you get, the more your happiness goes downhill? Like happiness peaks in your 20s and then it's just bills, back pain, and bad news from there? Yeah, that's not entirely true. Because there's something fascinating that shows up in psychology research. It's called the U-shaped curve of happiness, and it means exactly what it sounds like. Imagine a graph. On the left, you've got your early adult years, 20s, maybe early 30s. That line starts out high. You're young, energetic, idealistic. But then, around your 40s and early 50s, the line starts dipping. Like, noticeably. You might feel more pressure, more dissatisfaction, more, is this really it kind of thoughts? It's midlife, after all. The time of career ruts, teenage kids, aging parents, and wondering if you picked the wrong path 20 years ago. But here's the cool part. The line doesn't keep dropping. It bottoms out, and then it starts climbing again. That's right. According to decades of data across dozens of countries, happiness actually starts to rise again after your early 50s. And it often keeps climbing well into your 60s and even 70s. Weird, right? It's like life says, all right, you've been through the thick of it. Now let's lighten the load a bit. Now, you might be wondering, why does this happen? Why would happiness bounce back just when your body starts creaking and the world expects you to slow down? Well, a few things are happening here. First off, your expectations shift. When you're younger, you're constantly chasing things. Career goals, family goals, status goals, and if you don't hit those targets, you feel like you've failed. But after 50, you start letting go of that measuring stick. You stop comparing yourself to everyone else on Instagram. You realize, hey, maybe I don't need to be a millionaire, a CEO, or run a marathon to be content. That alone frees up a ton of emotional weight. Second, you become more emotionally skilled. This is subtle, but huge. Your brain gets better at regulating emotion, not because you don't feel stuff, but because you've lived through enough to know what actually matters. You don't spiral over small stuff. You don't chase drama. You've seen enough to know that bad days pass, that not every opinion matters, and that most problems aren't as permanent as they feel. Third, you start pruning your life. Fewer toxic people, less pretending, more quality over quantity in friendships, in time, in how you spend your energy. And when you start living more in line with what actually feeds your soul, surprise, surprise, your mood lifts. You stop living on autopilot and start living on purpose. And here's one more theory researchers talk about. When you reach your 50s, you start feeling time differently. You're not immortal anymore, and that actually makes you savor things more. A cup of coffee on the porch, a walk with your dog, watching your kid laugh. They hit deeper. It's like the volume of joy gets turned up even if life is quieter overall. Now, just to be real with you, this U-shaped curve isn't a magic guarantee. Not everyone feels happier the second they turn 53. Life still throws curveballs. Health issues happen. Finances, relationships, it's all part of the mix. But the overall trend, it's solid. It shows up in study after study. And it tells us something incredibly hopeful. You might just feel better with age. Not in some fake 50 is the new 30 kind of way, but in a deep, real, peaceful way that only comes from having lived long enough to know what really matters. So yeah, if you've been feeling like things are heavier right now and you're wondering if it's just downhill from here, maybe hang on. Maybe you're closer to the upswing than you think.
Friendships become more critical than family ties for mental health. Okay, here's something kind of unexpected. As you get older, especially once you hit your 50s, friendships can actually matter more than family when it comes to your mental health. Yep, that might sound weird at first, right? We grow up hearing that family is everything, that blood is thicker than water, that your kids and your spouse should be your world. And don't get me wrong, family can be a powerful support system. But here's the twist. When researchers started tracking happiness, well-being, and mental sharpness in people over 50, they noticed a pattern. And it was this. The people who had strong friendships, like real, two-way, enjoyable, laugh till you snort friendships, consistently showed better mental health than those who only had strong family ties, especially men. And we'll get to that in a minute. But first, let's break down why this matters so much at this stage in life. In your 50s, your world starts shifting.
Your kids might be grown or mostly independent. Your parents might need more care or may no longer be around. You're likely past the chaos of building a career from scratch and maybe even thinking about retirement. And while all that's happening, something else sneaks in quietly, a creeping sense of isolation. See, family roles are often based on duty, obligation, habit. You call your sibling because it's what you've always done. You help your kid because you're supposed to. You take care of your parents because they raised you. But friendship? That's voluntary. Friendships are based on shared joy, humor, honesty, and emotional safety. You choose them and they choose you back, which is probably why they're so powerful for your mental health. Now, let's talk about men, because this part is kind of crucial. For a lot of guys, friendships tend to take a back seat over the years. You get busy with work, with raising kids, with being the provider. And before you know it, your social circle shrinks down to coworkers, your spouse, and maybe a group text that barely stays alive. But guess what? Studies show that men's mental health is deeply impacted by this lack of close friendships, especially around midlife. And it's not about needing a huge squad or planning epic fishing trips every weekend. It's about having at least one or two friends you can be real with. Friends who check in, who gets your weird jokes, who've seen you at your worst and didn't bail. That kind of friendship acts like emotional insulation. It protects against depression, cognitive decline, even cardiovascular disease. Seriously, just having a close friend you trust, someone you can text at midnight or grab lunch with without explaining yourself, can literally help you live longer. And no, this doesn't mean family becomes irrelevant. You can still love your partner, be there for your kids, and keep your family bond strong. But those friendships, they fill a different part of the emotional landscape. They give you perspective. They help you laugh at yourself. They remind you who you were before you were someone's boss, parent, or caregiver. And here's a fun little bonus fact. People with strong friendships in their 50s are also more likely to stay mentally sharp in their 70s and beyond. It's like brain fertilizer. Conversations, jokes, inside stories, they keep those neurons firing. So if you're in your 50s, or heading that way, and you kind of let your friendships drift, this is your nudge. Text someone. Make that lunch plan. Pick up the call instead of letting it go to voicemail again. Not because it's polite, but because it might be one of the most important things you can do for your mental health. Your brain, your mood, and your future self will thank you.
You become invisible in society's eyes. Let's talk about something that no one really warns you about, but once it happens, you definitely feel it. And that is, you start to feel invisible. Not metaphorically, like actually invisible. To cashiers, to colleagues, to hiring managers, to media, even to people walking down the street. Once you cross into your 50s, something subtle but real starts to shift. And it's not about how you see the world. It's about how the world starts seeing you, or, more accurately, how it stops. This isn't just a dramatic feeling. It's a real documented phenomenon. It's called ageism, and it's quietly everywhere. Now, most of us grow up hearing how elders are respected in society, that older equals wiser, that turning 50 or 60 is supposed to mean you've made it, that you've got life figured out. But in practice, it often looks more like this. You get passed over for a job because they're looking for someone with fresh energy. You notice people speak slower to you, like you're suddenly hard of hearing. Your ideas in meetings don't land the same way. The cashier looks past you to smile at the younger person behind you. Fashion, entertainment, ads, none of it seems made with you in mind anymore. And it's not your imagination.
Sociologists and psychologists have studied this. Ageism doesn't just exist, it increases after 50 and affects your mental and physical health in measurable ways. One study even found that older adults who absorbed negative stereotypes about aging were more likely to experience memory decline and depression. Why? Because if the world treats you like you're winding down, eventually you might start to believe it. And this goes double for the workplace. Let's say you're applying for a new job in your 50s. You've got experience, wisdom, patience, perspective, all the stuff you wish you had when you were 30. But you might still get filtered out by hiring software. You might be seen as too expensive, too set in your ways, or not tech-savvy enough. And maybe no one says it out loud, but it's there. This experience can quietly chip away at your sense of worth. It can make you question whether you're still relevant, whether you still matter. Now, let's pause here, because this isn't meant to sound hopeless. The truth is, you absolutely do matter. But this is about recognizing that ageism is real, and that if you feel it, you're not imagining things, you're not too sensitive. You're noticing a pattern that exists systemically, even if it's subtle. And here's what makes it tricky. It happens just gradually enough that it doesn't always feel like a big moment. It's a slow fade. Like, one day you realize you're not being asked for your opinion in the same way anymore. Or no one's inviting you to brainstorm anymore. Or you're being described as sweet when you're pitching something bold. And let's be honest, for women, this hits harder and earlier. Because our culture ties so much value to appearance, women in midlife often feel this invisibility creeping in even before 50. So, what do you do about it? Well, first off, you don't disappear unless you agree to. There's a quiet kind of rebellion in refusing to shrink. It can look like speaking up in rooms where you're expected to stay quiet, wearing what you want, not what's appropriate for your age, starting a business, a podcast, a side project, anything that creates visibility on your own terms, surrounding yourself with people who see and value you fully, calling out ageist moments, even the small ones, when you feel safe to do so. And if you do feel invisible right now, here's something to remember. It's not because you've lost your value. It's because the lens society uses is narrow and flawed. You haven't disappeared. You've just become something people don't always bother to look for. So maybe the real question is, what would you do differently if you didn't need their validation anymore? Because your 50s aren't a fade out. They can be a reset, a reemergence, or even a little quiet revolution. You don't need to fight for visibility. You can just step fully into it.
Your role as a mentor becomes more fulfilling. Okay, so here's something that might surprise you. In your 50s, you might notice a strange, almost magnetic pull toward helping other people figure things out. Not because you've got it all figured out yourself, let's be real, no one does, but because you've been there. And suddenly, you're that person people turn to for advice, for perspective, for guidance they didn't know they needed. What's wild is that feels good, like really good. And there's a scientific reason for that. See, something shifts in your brain chemistry when you hit this stage of life. Helping others, mentoring, guiding, even just being a sounding board actually triggers feel-good chemicals in your brain. We're talking dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin, the same stuff that lights up when you fall in love or eat something delicious. Your brain starts rewarding you for being generous with your wisdom. This isn't just feel-nice fluff either. It's deeply wired into our biology. Researchers call it generativity. That's a fancy word from psychologist Erik Erikson. Yeah, his name was Erik Erikson. And it basically means in midlife,
people naturally shift toward wanting to give back to the next generation. It's not about ego. It's about legacy, about feeling useful, about knowing your years and your scars meant something. And mentoring doesn't have to be this official sit down and listen to my wisdom kind of thing. It's way more casual. It can look like teaching a junior colleague how to survive their first big failure, guiding your kid or your friend's kid through a college or career decision, giving someone younger a heads up about stuff no one tells you in your 20s, helping someone avoid a mistake you once made, hard-earned lessons passed down like a life cheat code. And here's the bonus. It doesn't just help them. It helps you too. People who take on mentor-like roles in midlife, even informally, have lower rates of depression, better cognitive performance, and more satisfaction with life overall. One study even showed that retirees who volunteered as mentors in school programs had improved memory and executive function compared to their peers who didn't, just from giving their time and attention. No brain puzzles, no apps, just real connection. And think about this. You know all those life experiences you've had that felt random? The failures, heartbreaks, the jobs that didn't work out, the awkward conversations, the missed chances. Turns out they're valuable, not just to you, but to someone who hasn't been through them yet. Being a mentor lets you recycle your hard stuff. You get to turn past pain into present usefulness, which, let's be honest, is pretty magical. And it's not about being perfect or having all the answers. Most people don't want a flawless guru. They want someone real, someone who gets it, someone who's lived a little and doesn't judge them for not knowing yet. So if you find yourself having conversations that start with, "When I was your age," or "Here's something I wish someone told me," congratulations, you're mentoring even if you didn't mean to. And here's the truth no one tells you. That moment when someone says, "Thank you, that helped a lot," it hits differently. It stays with you. It reminds you that you're still building, even if you're not chasing the same goals anymore. Because your 50s aren't just about slowing down. They're about shifting into significance. And mentoring, whether it's one person or a whole community, is one of the clearest, most fulfilling ways to do that.
Marital satisfaction may rebound. Okay, let's talk about something that gets a bad rap, but might actually be a quiet turning point. The empty nest. You know the scene. Kids pack up for college or move out, and suddenly, the house is quiet. Too quiet. You look at your partner across the kitchen table and think, so, now what? For a lot of couples in their 50s, this moment is kinda scary. Like, what's left when the kids aren't the center of everything anymore? When the carpools, school projects, and teenage drama are over? Here's the twist most people don't talk about. Marital satisfaction often rebounds after the kids leave. Yeah, it goes up. Researchers have a name for this, the empty nest effect, and it's surprisingly positive. See, during the child-raising years, marriages can quietly take a back seat. Not out of neglect, but just out of sheer survival. You're juggling jobs, sleep schedules, parent-teacher conferences, sick days, bills, grocery lists. Romance? Who has time? But once the house clears out, guess what comes back into focus? You two! The original team! The people who started this whole thing. And something kind of beautiful happens. You remember how to be partners again.
not just parents. It's not always smooth at first. Some couples feel like strangers, navigating new rhythms. You suddenly have to talk again, not just exchange schedules. But if you lean into that awkwardness, that reintroduction, it can actually lead to a second honeymoon phase. Not the kind with fancy resorts, though, hey, go for it, but the emotional kind. The "oh, I forgot how much fun we have together" kind. Studies have shown that couples often experience greater closeness and more time for shared activities after their children move out. They laugh more, date nights return, fights become less about logistics and more about, well, deeper stuff. And weirdly, that can be a sign you're reconnecting. It's also a time when long-held dreams get dusted off. Maybe one of you always wanted to start a little business, or move to the countryside, or take ballroom dance classes. Now, you actually can. This season of life can be about rediscovery, not just of yourself, but of each other. And sure, not every couple comes out of the empty nest smiling. Sometimes it reveals cracks, but just as often it creates space to repair those cracks, to speak honestly, to grow together in a way that was hard when life was just too loud. And here's something interesting. This rebound in satisfaction tends to be stronger in women. Why? Because women often carry the emotional load of the household. When that load lightens, they finally have breathing room, time to enjoy the relationship as a person, not just as mom. Also, no more stepping on Legos. That helps too. Now, this isn't about pretending everything is rosy, but it is about noticing a shift, a quiet, often unexpected one, where instead of being done with your relationship, you get a second act, a second connection, maybe even a second chance. So if you're in your 50s and the house feels emptier than it used to, look across the table again. There's a good chance you'll see someone who's still got stories to share. And this time, you might actually have time to listen.
Social pruning begins. Let's talk about something kinda sneaky that starts happening in your 50s. You don't throw a party about it. You don't really announce it. It just sorta happens. You stop returning some texts. You let certain friendships fade out. You scroll past updates from people you used to grab coffee with, and you don't really feel bad about it. That's called social pruning. And no, it doesn't mean you're turning into a cold, unfriendly hermit. It's actually something your brain does on purpose. In your younger years, especially your 20s and 30s, there's this urge to collect people. Coworkers, college friends, gym buddies, networking contacts, neighbors, parents from your kids' school. Your social circle is like this wild, sprawling garden. But when you hit your 50s, you start trimming. Not out of bitterness, not because you've given up, but because your emotional energy becomes more precious. You start to realize you don't want to spend it on small talk or performative friendships anymore. You want depth, trust, genuine connection. There's even neuroscience behind this shift. As we age, we become more selective about who we spend time with. This is tied to something called socio-emotional selectivity theory, which basically says when you feel like time is more limited, you prioritize what matters most. You begin to invest in fewer, richer relationships, the kinds where you can say the hard thing, or sit in silence,
or laugh till your ribs hurt over absolutely nothing. Here's the interesting twist. This pruning doesn't usually feel like a dramatic cutoff. It's more like a slow unfollow, a gentle stepping back, an inner voice saying, I think I'm done trying so hard with this person. And sometimes people notice. They might say you're distant or that you've changed. But you have. You've changed because you've grown. You've survived heartbreak, raised humans, worked for decades, buried friends, felt joy so strong it made you cry, and loss so deep it never really left. And somewhere along the way, your inner circle becomes sacred. Not exclusive, just intentional. You keep the ones who get you, who sees you, the real you. Not just the role you played in their life, not just the version of you from 10 years ago. So yeah, in your 50s, you might start leaving some group chats on read. You might stop tolerating the flaky friend, the energy vampire, the one who only calls when they need something. That's not selfish. It's wise. You're not just growing older, you're growing clearer about what fills you up and what drains you. And let's be honest, you've only got so many dinners left, so many phone calls, so many lazy afternoons to spend with people who truly matter. Might as well make every one of them count. So the next time you catch yourself pulling away from a surface-level connection, don't feel guilty. You're not closing yourself off, you're clearing space for the kind of friendships that feed your soul. And that's one of the best things about this chapter of life.
Walking speed predicts aging quality. All right, here's something weirdly specific, but kind of brilliant. You want to know how well someone's aging? Don't check their blood work. Don't look at their wrinkles or ask about their cholesterol. Just watch them walk. Seriously, a growing body of research says that your walking speed in your 50s might be one of the best predictors of how fast you're aging, both inside and out. And we're not talking about Olympic power walking here. This is just your natural pace. How briskly you move from the car to the store, how fast you stroll through your house, how long it takes you to cross the street. Turns out that simple pace is connected to everything from heart health to brain function to your biological age, which isn't about how many birthdays you had, but how worn out your cells are. In one long-term study, researchers at Duke University followed over 1,000 people from childhood into midlife. What they found was stunning. People who walked more slowly at age 45 already showed signs of accelerated aging in their brains, lungs, teeth, and even their DNA. And here's the kicker. Many of these changes had nothing to do with injuries or chronic illness. It wasn't about bad knees or a sore hip. It was about overall system slowdown. Your body was quite literally lagging. But walking speed isn't just about your legs. It's a whole body performance test. Think about it. To walk at a brisk, coordinated pace, your body has to sync up everything: muscle strength, balance, joint flexibility, lung capacity, blood circulation, nervous system signaling, and brain coordination. If even one of those systems is struggling, your pace dips. Not always in a way you notice, but your body notices. And apparently so do scientists. They're even starting to call walking speed the sixth vital sign, right after heart rate, temperature, blood pressure, respiration, and oxygen saturation. We might soon add, hey, how fast do you walk? But here's the good news. This isn't one of those depressing, well, it's all downhill from here, facts. Walking speed is adjustable, and that means your aging trajectory is too.
If you're someone who already walks briskly, keep it up. Your body and brain are likely thanking you every step of the way. If you're someone who slowed down a bit and you notice that you've slowed down, that's not a sign of failure. It's a signal, a wake-up call, not just to move more, but to check in. Are your legs losing strength? Are your lungs feeling winded? Are you avoiding walking altogether because something feels off? You don't need a gym membership to fix this. You don't need to train for a marathon. Just walk. Walk with a little purpose. Walk like you got somewhere to be, even if it's just around the block. Walk while listening to music. Walk with a friend. Walk your thoughts out of your head. Because the pace you keep in your 50s, it sets the tone for the decades that follow. Faster walking has been linked to lower risk of heart disease, better memory retention, reduced dementia risk, and longer lifespan overall. It's not magic, it's just biology in motion. So the next time someone says, take your time, smile politely, and then maybe don't.
Sitting too long becomes far more dangerous. Okay, real talk. How much are you sitting these days? Be honest, because once you hit your 50s, sitting becomes a whole different kind of dangerous. And I'm not just talking about, oh no, I've got a stiff back. I mean serious health risks, the kind that can creep up silently, even if you think you're being healthy. You've probably heard the phrase, sitting is the new smoking. Sounds dramatic, right? But in midlife and beyond, that phrase starts to hit a little closer to home, because here's what's been quietly happening behind the scenes. As your body ages, it becomes less forgiving of long, sedentary stretches. Your circulation slows down faster, your muscle mass decreases, and your metabolism drops even more than it already was. That means when you sit for hours, on the couch, at a desk, in the car, wherever, your blood flow drops, your core weakens, and your insulin sensitivity nosedives. Your body just isn't processing sugars and fats the same way it used to. And here's the kicker. Even if you exercise, like clocking in a morning jog or hitting the gym a few times a week, it doesn't fully cancel out the damage from too much sitting. This is something researchers called the active couch potato effect. You're technically fit on paper, but if you spend the rest of your day in a chair, your heart, muscles, and brain are still paying the price. Studies now link prolonged sitting in midlife to increased risk of cardiovascular disease, higher likelihood of type 2 diabetes, more rapid loss of muscle and bone mass, and even accelerated cognitive decline. That last one's especially eerie. Imaging studies show that people who sit too much in their 50s and 60s actually start to show shrinkage in brain areas related to memory. Not great. But here's the part most people miss. It's not just how much you sit. It's about how long you sit without interruption. You could sit for 8 hours in a day, but if you're getting up every 30 to 45 minutes, walking around, stretching, standing for a few calls, your body handles it way better than sitting in one long, unbroken block. And the fix? Honestly, it's pretty simple. You don't need a standing desk made out of gold. You don't have to join a dance class or do 5-minute planks in the break room. You just need to create little disruptions. Stand up during commercials. Take calls while pacing. Walk to the kitchen and back during emails. Use a timer. Or go old school and just drink more water so you have to get up to pee. Small movement breaks throughout your day reboot your metabolism, wake up your muscles, and boost your focus. And this becomes especially important in your 50s. Because here's the real truth most people don't realize. This is the decade where future mobility gets built or lost. The aches you ignore now, the flexibility you stop maintaining, the lazy habits you adopt just for convenience, they compound quietly, year by year. So don't let your chair turn into a slow trap. You don't need to become an ultra-marathoner, but you do need to move, often and in little bursts, because the older you get, the more your body whispers, use me or lose me.
Your circadian rhythm shifts earlier. So you used to be a night owl, could stay up till 2 a.m. no problem. Netflix, reading, scrolling, just vibing in the quiet of the night. You'd sleep in till 10, and that was totally normal. Maybe even necessary. But then something weird started happening. You hit your 50s, and suddenly, bam, you're waking up at 5:30 a.m. like some sort of breakfast cereal commercial person. Not because you have to, just because. You're not alone. This isn't a random personality shift. It's your circadian rhythm, your internal body clock, quietly resetting itself as you age. And it's surprisingly common. What most people don't realize is that your sleep-wake cycle isn't fixed. It's biological, yes, but it evolves. And after 50, a key player behind that evolution is a hormone called melatonin. Melatonin is your brain's natural sleep switch. As darkness falls, your brain releases melatonin to tell your body, all right, let's wind down. But starting in midlife, two things begin to change. You produce less melatonin overall. You start releasing it earlier in the evening. That means you start getting sleepy sooner, even if your mind is saying, wait, it's only 9 p.m. And because your body's entire system is shifting forward, you also start waking up earlier, even if you didn't sleep as long as you used to. This is why some people who are lifetime night owls suddenly find themselves falling asleep during movies, waking up before their alarm, feeling done for the day by dinner, and maybe feeling a little off about it. But here's the deal. This isn't dysfunction. It's an adaptation. Your body is trying to work with the light it's given, literally. As we age, we also absorb less light through the eyes, especially the kind that regulates our sleep cycle. So your brain moves your rhythm earlier to squeeze the most out of daylight. You're not broken, you're evolving. Now, this shift can feel annoying, especially if you live with teenagers, or if you still work late, or if your social life still revolves around evenings. But it doesn't have to ruin your sleep. You just have to adjust how you sync with time. Here's what helps. Get morning sunlight. Natural light early in the day reinforces your shifted rhythm and boosts alertness. Cut screen time an hour before bed. Screens mess with melatonin, especially when your levels are already changing. Avoid late caffeine or alcohol. Both mess with sleep more after 50. Keep a consistent wake time. Yes, even on weekends. Your body loves rhythm. And most of all, don't fight the shift like it's a flaw. There's actually something kind of peaceful about it. Early mornings in your 50s can feel sacred. You're up before the noise, your thoughts are clearer, you don't feel rushed. The space to think, to walk, to breathe. You might even find yourself saying things like, it's a beautiful morning, and meaning it. Who knew? So yeah, maybe you're not the night owl anymore, but you've earned this sunrise.
Alcohol tolerance drops sharply. Okay, let's talk about something that might catch you off guard in your 50s. Alcohol hits harder. Like, weirdly harder. You used to have 2 glasses of wine at dinner and still be sharp enough to fold laundry, text your cousin back, and win an argument about politics. Now, 2 glasses in, and you're Googling, how long does red wine stay in my system, while trying to remember where you left your glasses. Spoiler, they're on your head. It's not your imagination. It's not that you lost your edge. It's biology. Specifically, your liver is changing. See, alcohol gets processed in your body by enzymes, mainly one called alcohol dehydrogenase. In your younger years, this enzyme works like a well-oiled machine, breaking down booze before it can mess with you too much. But after 50, your liver slows down. The enzymes, fewer and less efficient. Which means alcohol stays in your system longer, its effects hit harder, and you sober up slower. And it's not just the buzz, it's also the hangover. Ever notice how hangovers in your 50s feel existential? It's not just, oh, my head hurts. It's, why do my knees ache? Why am I so anxious? And should I rethink all my life choices? That's because alcohol at this age hits more than just your head. Dehydration sets in faster. Sleep quality takes a huge hit, especially REM sleep, which is crucial for emotional regulation. Your gut microbiome gets disrupted, which messes with digestion, mood, and even immunity. And your inflammation levels rise more than they used to. Now, here's the kicker. Even if you don't feel drunk, your blood alcohol concentration can still be high. That's why more people over 50 get caught off guard, feeling fine, but still over the legal limit. The same drink now affects you differently, not because you're weaker, but because your body's processing system has changed. And it's not just the liver. Your body composition shifts too. You have less muscle mass, which normally helps dilute alcohol. You have more body fat, which holds on to alcohol longer. And your total body water content drops, so each drink becomes more concentrated in your system. So if you're wondering, why can't I drink like I used to? That's why. Your body's doing math differently now, and alcohol gets a bigger piece of the equation. But here's the twist. This isn't necessarily bad news. Because let's be honest, in your 50s, the goal is less about drinking more and more about feeling good afterward. And it turns out you can drink less and get the same social buzz without the miserable aftermath. It's a shift in mindset. You start thinking less in terms of how much can I handle, and more in terms of what's actually worth it. Sometimes that's a single glass with friends. Sometimes it's a toast and then switching to sparkling water. And sometimes it's a night off entirely, because sleep sounds better than wine. Who are you? And if you do drink, a few things help. Eat first. Food slows alcohol absorption. Hydrate as you go. Water between drinks is magic. Go slow. Your liver needs the time now. Know your meds. Alcohol interacts differently after 50, especially with things like blood pressure meds or sleep aids. It's not about giving it up completely, unless you want to. It's about understanding the new rules your body is playing by. Because now, you're smarter. You've lived enough to know that just because you can doesn't mean you should, and that waking up clear-headed feels just as good, sometimes better, than that third round. So yeah, you're not a lightweight. You're just upgraded.
Cold exposure may benefit longevity. All right, so let's get weird for a second. Cold showers. Yeah, you've probably heard someone on the internet rave about them, usually while shirtless in the snoo, claiming they'll make you live forever. But before you roll your eyes and reach for a warm blanket, here's the surprising part. They're not totally wrong. There's actual science behind the idea that exposing your body to cold on purpose
could have powerful effects as you age, especially in your 50s and beyond. Let's break it down. Your body, right now, is all about maintaining balance, keeping temperature steady, managing inflammation. But after 50, your baseline shifts. Your metabolism slows, chronic inflammation starts creeping in, recovery takes longer, and your cells start behaving a little, well, lazier. That's where cold exposure comes in, not to punish you, but to wake your biology back up. When you expose your body to cold, like with a cold shower, ice bath, or even a brisk walk in the winter without bundling up like a snowman, your system gets a controlled shock. And in response, it goes, "Whoa, let's get our act together." Here's what actually happens. Norepinephrine spikes. That's a chemical that sharpens focus and reduces inflammation. Brown fat activates. That's the good fat, the kind that burns energy to keep you warm. It ramps up your metabolism. Your mitochondria, the powerhouses in your cells, start working harder, making your body more efficient. And it lowers levels of pro-inflammatory cytokines. Those are the things that cause chronic inflammation and are linked to everything from heart disease to Alzheimer's. In short, a few minutes of cold exposure trains your body like a workout, but for your nervous system, hormones, and immune response. And here's what's really fascinating. Some studies show that cold adaptation, doing it consistently over time, can help improve insulin sensitivity, lower blood pressure, improve sleep, increase dopamine by 250%. Yes, 250%. That's the feel-good chemical that makes you feel motivated and alive. And the cool thing is, pun absolutely intended, is you don't need to become a full-on Wim Hof. You don't need to sit in a tub of ice cubes every morning. A 60-second blast of cold at the end of your regular shower is enough to trigger a response. Even just cooling your face or neck with cold water can help stimulate the vagus nerve, a key player in stress regulation. Now, let's be real. It feels awful at first. Your brain screams, "Why are we doing this?" But about 10 seconds in, your breathing shifts, your skin tingles, and you step out of the shower like you just finished a superhero training montage. What's especially cool, again, I know, is how cold exposure builds resilience. Not just physically, but mentally. It becomes a kind of mini stress rehearsal. You train yourself to stay calm in discomfort, to breathe through challenges, and that has real-life ripple effects, especially in your 50s, when stress tolerance can start to wear thin. But, big but, let's talk safety. Cold exposure isn't for everyone, especially if you have heart conditions, struggle with circulation, or take medications that affect your temperature regulation. Always ease into it. Don't just cannonball into freezing water out of nowhere. And if it ever feels painful, dizzying, or too intense, stop. The goal isn't to suffer. The goal is to nudge your body, just enough to say, "Hey, remember how strong and adaptable you are?" So next time you're about to turn the shower knob to warm, maybe, just maybe, try finishing with 30 seconds of cold. Yell if you have to. Laugh, swear, dance, then step out, towel off, and go conquer your day with a nervous system that's buzzing in the best way. You're not just getting older, you're getting tougher, sharper, more alive, all thanks to a little chill.
Legacy becomes more important than success. Let's talk about a weird but beautiful shift that sneaks up on you in your 50s. You might not notice it right away. You'll still have your to-do lists, your job, your goals, your routines. But then, one day, you'll feel this tiny nudge in the background of your mind, like your brain asking, "Okay, but what does any of this actually mean?" That's not a midlife crisis. That's your brain starting to care about legacy. And this isn't just some philosophical fluff. There's neuroscience to back it up. Researchers have found that as we pass 50, certain brain networks become more active. Specifically, regions tied to purpose, meaning, and intergenerational thinking. You start to care less about climbing ladders, collecting accolades, or chasing status. Instead, your focus subtly shifts toward what you'll leave behind. Not just money, not just stuff, but impressions, values, stories, ideas, contributions. It's almost like your brain flips a switch and goes, "You've built things for yourself long enough. Now let's build something that lasts beyond you." And the wild part? This shift feels really good. Legacy thinking isn't about ego, it's about connection. Your brain is literally trying to find a way to stay meaningful even after you're gone. Let's zoom in a bit. When scientists study people in their 50s and beyond, they noticed increased activity in the default mode network, a part of the brain tied to self-reflection, storytelling, and imagining the future. At the same time, people report feeling more drawn to mentoring, volunteering, creating art, spending time with grandchildren, or recording family history, things that have no immediate payoff, but leave a mark. That's legacy. You stop asking, "What can I get from the world?" and start wondering, "What can I leave with the world?" And no, legacy doesn't mean writing a book or founding a company. It can be incredibly small and personal. A quiet tradition you pass on, a kind word that changes someone's path, the way you make people feel when they're around you. And here's the best part. This shift toward legacy is mentally protective. Psychologists have found that people who focus on generativity, that's the fancy word for legacy building, have lower rates of depression, better memory retention, and even longer lifespans. Why? Because purpose is a kind of fuel. When your actions feel like they matter, your body shows up more fully. Your brain has a reason to keep sharpening. Your choices get more intentional. You feel anchored even as the world changes fast around you. But here's the catch. Legacy doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't show up in the form of promotions or praise. It shows up in quiet moments when you listen without interrupting, when you teach someone what you've learned the hard way, when you forgive instead of holding a grudge, when you stay consistent even when no one's watching. And no, it's never too late to think about legacy. If you're in your 50s and you feel like you're only just waking up to this idea, good. That's your brain doing exactly what it's wired to do at this stage. You're not falling behind. You're stepping into the part of life where what matters most finally becomes clear. So if success used to be about climbing, legacy is about planting. So that someone else, maybe years from now, can sit in the shade of something you started. That matters. And not just when you're gone, it starts changing you the moment you start living that way. Spirituality tends to rise. even among atheists. Here's something nobody warns you about when you hit your 50s. You start thinking about things differently. Not just practically, like money, retirement, health, but existentially, as in, why am I here? What's the point of all this? Where am I headed, really? And no, this doesn't mean you suddenly join a monastery or start burning sage at full moon rituals, unless you want to, zero judgment. But it does mean something deeper happens in your brain, even if you've been a hardcore realist your entire life. Spirituality starts to creep in. And it's not necessarily religious. It's not about rules or doctrines. It's more like a softening, a widening of perspective, a rising urge to understand something bigger than you. In fact, researchers have studied this across cultures, genders, backgrounds, and the pattern holds. Even people who identified as atheist or agnostic in their youth often experience an unexpected internal shift in their 50s and beyond. They start becoming more open to things like meaning, legacy, interconnectedness, gratitude, awe. And here's why. Once you hit your 50s, mortality stops being abstract. You start losing people, friends, family, colleagues. You go to more funerals. You see time differently. And suddenly the question isn't just, how much time do I have left? It's, what do I do with the time I have? This doesn't mean you get fearful. It means you get curious. You might start noticing sunsets again, or wondering about consciousness, or feeling a pull to nature, art, poetry. Things that stir you without explanation. The shift toward the spiritual, the reflective, is actually a known stage in adult development. Psychologist Erik Erikson called it the integrity versus despair phase. Basically, you look back at your life and you try to make sense of it. Did it mean something? Was it connected to anything larger? Can I accept what's happened and find peace with what's next? That's spirituality. Not in a preachy, all-knowing way, but in a humble, searching human way. And guess what? It helps. Studies show that people who embrace this stage, who let themselves lean into awe, purpose, and meaning, tend to feel more mentally resilient, report less fear of dying, have stronger social connections, and maintain better emotional regulation. So no, spirituality isn't a weakness. It's a strength. It's a sign that your brain has matured beyond just logic and survival into something more nuanced. Think about it. We spend our early lives focused on accumulating experiences, skills, money, status. But in your 50s, you start wanting to understand, to connect the dots, to find beauty in the mess, to sit with questions instead of rushing to answers. And here's the twist. You don't have to call it spirituality if that word doesn't sit right with you. Call it deep noticing, or meaning-making, or just finally paying attention. You start to realize that sunsets feel more profound now. That holding your grandchild can make you cry without knowing why. That certain music hits you in the chest like it never did before. That being fully present in a quiet room can feel sacred. That's the work your brain's doing. Not because you're unraveling, but because you're evolving. So if you've caught yourself lately wondering about life, about your place in the universe, about what echoes after you're gone, congratulations! You're not getting soft.
You're getting spiritually sharp. Whether you believe in God, energy, love, or simply the quiet hum of the universe, you're tuning in. And that matters.
You become more forgiving. Let's talk about something you might not even notice happening until one day you do. You wake up in your 50s, look in the mirror, and realize you're not beating yourself up the same way anymore. Sure, you still make mistakes, still overthink things sometimes, but that constant nagging voice that used to say, "You should have known better," or "You're such an idiot," or "Why can't you get it right?" It's quieter. Not gone, necessarily, but it doesn't run the show anymore. Because here's the truth most people don't tell you. In your 50s, you start becoming more forgiving, and not just of other people, of yourself. And no, it's not because life has gotten easier. It's because you've gotten better at reframing it. This little mental skill, cognitive reframing, is like emotional alchemy. You take something painful and you shift the perspective. You don't deny it, you don't sugarcoat it, you just look at it differently. And your brain, after 50+ years of watching how things actually play out, finally has the data to do that. You start to say things like, "Yeah, that was hard, but I learned from it. I've really messed that up, but it wasn't the end of the world. Back then, I was doing the best I could with what I had." And the wild part? You mean it. You see, when you're younger, you tend to carry your failures like they're etched in stone. You think your bad decisions define you forever. But in your 50s, you realize you're a moving target. You've changed. And that means your story, the way you tell it to yourself, can change too. This is what forgiveness really is. It's not pretending something didn't hurt. It's not letting someone off the hook for doing wrong. It's saying, "That happened, but I'm not going to let it poison what's ahead." And when it comes to self-forgiveness, that's a superpower. Think about it. How many years did you spend carrying guilt over things you couldn't undo? Parenting mistakes, career regrets, words you wished you'd said or not said, people you hurt, opportunities you missed. But now, you can zoom out. You start to see your life less like a scoreboard and more like a mosaic. Some tiles are cracked, some are crooked, but the full picture is yours, and it's actually kind of beautiful. Psychologists have studied this shift, and it's real. As we age, our prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that handles perspective taking, gets better at integrating complex emotions. We don't react as impulsively. We don't cling to perfection. We start to make peace with the gray areas. That's why people in their 50s and beyond often show increased emotional regulation, self-compassion, long-term thinking, and, surprise, forgiveness. Not because life suddenly became kind, but because you did. And let's not gloss over how much this matters, because chronic guilt, that eats at your health. Self-loathing, that isolates you. Carrying the past on your back every day, that's a weight that steals your present. Forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness, doesn't just feel better, it works better. It improves sleep, lowers blood pressure, boosts resilience, and clears space in your head for better things. So if you're in your 50s and you've noticed yourself
sighing instead of spiraling, or shrugging instead of shouting, or saying, "Wow, I was human," instead of, "I'm such a failure." Guess what? That's your mind leveling up. You're not just older, you're wiser. You've learned that holding on to every mistake is like hugging a cactus. It only hurts you. So you drop the need to be perfect. You drop the need to rewrite the past, and instead you start saying, "I forgive you. Let's keep going." To your younger self, to your present self, to that version of you that didn't know any better, and the version who's just now learning how to let go.
Peak reflection occurs. Have you ever caught yourself staring out the window, not really seeing anything, just thinking? Like full-on mental time travel, flipping through memories like old photo albums, reevaluating your choices, questioning things you never gave a second thought before? That's not you being dramatic or moody. That's your brain in peak reflection mode, and it hits hard in your 50s. There's actually a network in your brain built for this. It's called the Default Mode Network, or DMN. It lights up when you're not actively doing something, like when you're daydreaming, reminiscing, or internally monologuing your entire life. And guess what? In midlife, especially around your 50s, this system becomes way more active. Scientists have looked at this through brain scans, and the pattern is striking. People in this age group tend to spend more time in introspective thought. Not just randomly daydreaming, but deeply revisiting who they are, what they've done, and what actually matters going forward. It's like your mind decides to open up the full archive, blow the dust off old files, and ask, is this still who I am? Is this still what I care about? And here's where it gets interesting. This reflection isn't always comfortable. It can feel like midlife crisis energy, questioning your career, your marriage, your purpose. But it's not always about falling apart. Sometimes it's about reorganizing. This kind of mental recalibration is common, even healthy. You might find yourself thinking things like, I've spent so much time chasing status. Do I actually care about that anymore? Why am I still carrying this grudge from 20 years ago? What do I want the rest of my life to stand for? That's not you being lost. That's your internal compass realigning. You're rebalancing your values, and that's huge. Maybe work used to be your #1 priority. Now maybe peace is. Maybe you were obsessed with approval. Now you'd rather just be authentic. Maybe you used to define success by the size of your house. Now it's about who feels safe in it. This kind of shift is quiet but profound. It's like emotional tectonic plates moving beneath the surface. No one else may notice it right away, but you feel it. And it's not random, it's biological. The DMN is closely tied to identity and meaning, so when it activates more often, it prompts you to review your story and edit it. It's like your brain is saying, we've gathered enough data, now let's figure out what it actually means. Some people respond to this by switching careers. Others move to a quieter place. Some start therapy. Some take up painting, hiking, and journaling. Some finally forgive. Some finally leave. Some finally stay. But underneath it all, what's happening is the same. A deeper connection to who you really are, not just who the world expected you to be. And yeah, sometimes this comes with sadness. You might grieve the time you lost,
the people who drifted, the chances you didn't take. But even that is part of the process, because by sitting with those thoughts, not running from them, you're allowing yourself to grow into the next version of you, one that's more grounded, more honest, more in tune with what actually brings meaning to your life. So if lately you find yourself zoning out more, questioning things you never used to question, feeling strangely nostalgic or even unsettled, that's not a glitch. That's your default mode network doing its job, helping you declutter your mental house, helping you sift through the noise, the expectations, the old scripts, so you can rewrite what comes next with intention. You're not falling behind, you're pausing to reflect, and that, weirdly enough, might be the most productive thing you do.
What actually matters often becomes internal, not external. So here's a weird thing that happens in your 50s. You stop caring about stuff you thought you'd always care about. Not overnight, of course. It's more like one morning you realize you haven't checked your LinkedIn in a month. And you start asking yourself, wait, why was I even chasing a job title that made me miserable? Or, do I actually care if I have abs anymore? Or, is this watch for me, or so someone else thinks I'm successful? That's not you giving up. That's your psychology evolving. Psychologists have tracked this for years, and there's a clear pattern. Once people hit midlife, usually around 50, the definition of success starts shifting from external to internal. We're talking real stuff here. External is salary, looks, prestige, Instagrammable moments. Internal is connection, peace, purpose, health, time. It's not just a mindset, it's chemical. Your dopamine system, the part of your brain that's all about reward and chasing goals, starts quieting down a bit. That doesn't mean you lose motivation, but it does mean that ambition gets edited. Instead of more, bigger, faster, you start craving deeper, calmer, truer. And here's the wild part. This shift is measurable. In one long-term psychological study, researchers found that in people's 20s and 30s, the top personal values were things like achievement and recognition. But by their 50s, those dropped dramatically. What rose to the top? Authenticity, family, contentment, time. You're literally rewiring what your brain defines as a good life. And this doesn't mean you stop working or dressing up or setting goals. It just means those things aren't who you are anymore. They're just tools, not trophies. That expensive car? Cool. But does it bring you peace? That promotion? Nice. But does it cost you your weekend with your grandkids? That perfect skin routine? Go for it. But do you feel good when you're alone and your thoughts? People in their 50s start asking these questions without even realizing it. It's like an internal compass quietly turning toward the things that last. You might feel drawn to spend more time with old friends, or fix that relationship that's been broken for years, or say no to a social invite just because you'd rather be home reading. You might stop obsessing about looking young and start caring about feeling good. You might stop trying to impress strangers and start focusing on people who actually know your story. And here's the twist. This internal shift doesn't make you boring. It makes you free. Free from the grind, free from comparison, free from the exhausting treadmill of proving yourself. And honestly, a lot of people envy that energy. There's something powerful about being in your 50s and saying,
Yeah, I've done the hustle. I've worn the mask. I've chased the shiny stuff. Now I want something real. And that doesn't mean your life slows down. In fact, it often gets richer. You become a better friend, a better partner, a better version of yourself, because you're finally tuned in to what actually matters to you. Relationships, time, purpose, health, moments that feel good, not just look good. And that's not some fluffy wisdom. That's psychology. It's biology. It's years of living adding up to clarity. So if you've hit 50 and you're feeling strangely lighter, like you're not trying to impress anyone anymore, like you finally understand what makes you happy, congratulations. That's not a midlife crisis. That's a midlife upgrade.
Multitasking becomes harder. Ever opened a bunch of browser tabs and then completely forgotten why you opened half of them? Yeah, welcome to your 50s. But here's the thing, that's not a decline. It's a shift in how your brain works. Let's talk about multitasking. You know, the modern badge of honor. Texting while emailing, while half watching a Zoom meeting, and maybe listening to a podcast in the background. We've all done it. We've all tried to master it. But somewhere around your 50s, you might start noticing something weird. You can still do multiple things, but switching between them, it feels a little like wading through molasses. You forget what you were just doing. You get distracted mid-task. You might even find yourself standing in the kitchen thinking, why did I walk in here? That's not because your brain is broken. It's because your prefrontal cortex, the brain's CEO, is starting to optimize differently. When you're younger, your brain is kind of like a hyperactive intern. Sure, I'll do everything at once. Let's go. But in your 50s, it matures into something more like a wise old manager. Hold on. Let's do this right. One thing at a time. No chaos. Here's what's happening under the hood. Your working memory capacity starts to shrink a little. That's the short-term scratch pad your brain uses to juggle stuff. So instead of holding 5 spinning plates at once, it prefers maybe 2. Carefully. And your neural switching speed, the part of your brain that jumps between tasks, slows down just a bit. Not dramatically, but noticeably. So when you go from task A to task B, there's a lag, a pause, a little mental buffer zone. Now, some people panic when this starts happening. They think, am I losing it? Is this early dementia? Why can't I think as fast as I used to? But actually, this is your brain getting smarter. Because multitasking, turns out it's kind of a myth. Study after study shows that humans aren't really doing multiple things at once. We're just switching really fast. And every switch comes with a cost. Lost time, more mistakes, higher stress, mental fatigue. Your 50-year-old brain, it knows that. It starts to prioritize deep focus instead. It wants fewer tabs open. It wants to finish one thought before starting another. It values quality of attention, not just quantity of actions. That's why you might notice you're better at zoning in on one thing now. Reading a book cover to cover, solving a tough problem without bouncing around, listening more intently in conversations. It's not that you're slower, it's that you're more deliberate. And honestly, that's kind of powerful. Think about how much noise the world throws at you every day.
Emails, notifications, messages, apps, alerts. You used to try to keep up with it all. Now, you don't need to. Your brain says, let's do one thing. Let's do it well, then move on. That's not a weakness. That's focus wisdom. So if you find yourself forgetting what you were saying halfway through a sentence, don't panic. Laugh a little. Reset. Then say, where was I? And give yourself permission to do just one thing right now. Because the truth is, your brain isn't falling apart. It's just evolving out of chaos. You're not broken. You're just single-tasking by design.
Digital overstimulation affects sleep quality more. Let's start with a simple question. Why can't you sleep like you used to? You're tired, it's late, you want to sleep, but your brain? Still scrolling, still replaying that random thing someone said at work, still buzzing. And here's the plot twist a lot of people in their 50s don't see coming. It's not just stress. It's not just aging. It's your phone, your tablet, your TV, that little screen you're holding 2 inches from your eyeballs in the dark. Yeah, that one. See, after age 50, your body starts reacting differently to blue light, the kind that beams from screens and tells your brain, hey, it's daytime, stay awake. The problem is, it's not daytime. It's 11:37 p.m., and you're watching a YouTube video about how to fix your gut microbiome with fermented cabbage. But here's what's actually happening. That blue light hits your retina, even if your eyes are tired, and it tells your suprachiasmatic nucleus, fancy word, tiny brain structure, to delay melatonin production. Melatonin is your sleep hormone. It's your body's natural go-to-bed signal. And guess what? After 50, your melatonin levels naturally drop. Your retinal sensitivity increases, and your circadian rhythm, your inner body clock, starts shifting earlier. So that screen, it's not just messing with your mind. It's literally blocking the one hormone you desperately need to fall asleep. Now, you might be thinking, but I've always watched TV before bed. This is nothing new. That's the tricky part. When you were younger, your brain could bounce back faster. Melatonin kicked in eventually. Sleep pressure built up. You could fake your way to rest. But in your 50s, your sleep system gets pickier. You don't fall asleep as quickly, and you don't stay asleep as long. And the sleep you do get, it's lighter, less restorative. Here's a stat that might surprise you. Even 30 minutes of screen time before bed can reduce slow-wave sleep, the deep, healing kind, by up to 50% in older adults. And it's not just the light. It's the mental stimulation. You know that feeling when you're lying in bed and your mind starts scrolling even after your thumb stops? That's cortisol, your stress hormone. And it spikes when you're processing information, even fun stuff. So now you've got less melatonin, more cortisol, a light-blasted retina, and a brain that won't shut up about an email you read 3 hours ago. No wonder you're wide awake at 2 a.m. But here's the good news. This isn't permanent. You can actually outsmart it. Try these. Screen curfew. No phones, tablets, or TV at least 60 minutes before bed. Brutal, yes, but magical. Night mode. Use apps or settings that shift your screen to warmer tones after sunset. Blue light blockers. Glasses or screen filters can help. Not perfect, but better than nothing. Old school winding down. Read a paperback. Journal. Stretch. Do nothing. Dim the lights in your house in the evening. Make your environment match your biology. Because here's the truth. Your sleep isn't broken. It's just more sensitive, more easily hijacked, more in need of intentional rest. Not just, I closed my laptop, so I guess I'm done for the day.
And when you honor that, you might just start sleeping like you used to. Not because you tricked your brain, but because you finally gave it what it's been quietly asking for: darkness, stillness, and a little less glowing rectangle at midnight.
You retain long-term memories better than short-term. Let's be honest. Have you ever opened a new app, looked around for like 3 seconds and thought, nope, I don't have the energy for this today? Maybe it's some updated banking interface or a smart TV menu that requires a PhD just to find the volume. Or your friend sends you a video on some app you didn't even know existed. You try. You really do, but instead of it being fun or exciting, it just feels annoying. Now, before you start doubting your intelligence or blaming age, let's break down what's actually happening behind the scenes. Because this isn't about getting old and out of touch. It's about dopamine and your brain's shifting relationship with novelty. When you were younger, your brain was wired to chase the new music, new gadgets, new trends. Why? Because dopamine, your brain's reward chemical, spiked when something unfamiliar came along. It made learning feel good. It gave you energy to explore. It literally made you care about figuring stuff out. But by the time you hit your 50s, that dopamine response starts to cool off. Novelty doesn't trigger the same rush. Your brain no longer gets that little yes signal when facing something new. So learning a new app, navigating a new operating system, trying to figure out why your smart fridge is talking to your Wi-Fi, it's not harder because your brain is failing. It's harder because your motivation system has changed. Meanwhile, another shift is happening quietly in the background. Your short-term memory isn't what it used to be, and that's normal. Completely normal. You're still incredibly sharp, especially with long-term knowledge. You can remember that beach vacation from 2004 down to what song was playing. You can quote entire scenes from movies you saw once in the 90s. You know the route to a friend's house you haven't visited in years. That kind of memory, rock solid. Because long-term memory is built over time with repetition and meaning. And your brain is great at locking that stuff in. But short-term memory, like what a new icon means, or how to navigate a pop-up menu you've never seen before, that takes more mental effort now. And if your brain doesn't see a clear reward for doing it, it checks out. It decides, not worth it. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Your brain isn't broken. It's just become selective. Selective about what's worth learning. Selective about what deserves your time. Selective about what earns your attention. And in a world where digital interfaces change every 6 weeks for no real reason, that's actually a smart adaptation. But if you do want to keep adapting, there are a few tricks. Connect the new with the old. Link unfamiliar tools to things you already understand. Slow it down. Don't try to master a new platform in one sitting. Repetition is your friend. The more you engage, the more it moves from short to long-term storage. Find the why. If you don't care about an app's purpose, your brain won't either. And most importantly, Stop measuring yourself against 25-year-olds. They've got dopamine to burn and zero context. You've got wisdom, instincts, and the ability to tell when something's truly useful or just hype. So no, you're not bad with tech. You're just tuned differently now. More deliberate, more grounded, less dazzled by flash. And honestly, that's not a limitation. That's a filter. A smart one. Mind wandering increases. Okay, real talk. You're reading something, and halfway through the sentence, your brain takes a detour. You're washing the dishes, and suddenly you're thinking about a conversation from 12 years ago. You sit down to pay bills, and next thing you know, you're mentally reworking that vacation itinerary from 2016. Have you ever caught yourself doing that? It's easy to label it as a distraction, or worse, feel like it's a sign that your brain's slowing down. But here's the truth. Your mind is wandering more because your brain is evolving. And, ready for the twist, that wandering isn't a flaw. It's a feature. Let's unpack this. In your 50s and beyond, your brain starts tapping more heavily into something called the default mode network, a set of brain regions that lights up when you're not actively focused on the outside world. That network, it's like your brain's background processor. It kicks in when you're resting, reflecting, daydreaming, or just not trying so hard. And guess what? It's where some of your best ideas come from. You know those aha moments in the shower? The perfect comeback that hits you 3 hours too late? That random thought during a walk that suddenly solves the problem you'd been stuck on for days? Yeah, that's mind-wandering magic. Your brain, in those moments, is pulling together deep wells of memory, emotion, patterns, and logic, and mashing them up in ways your conscious mind can't when it's just ticking boxes or replying to emails. In your 50s, this kind of thinking becomes stronger. Why? Because you've got more life experience to pull from. You've absorbed patterns. You've seen outcomes. You've felt nuance. So when your mind drifts now, it's not just noise. It's compost for insight. But of course, there's the flip side. If you're not careful, that wandering can also turn into rumination, going over the same worries again and again, especially when you're tired, or bored, or overstimulated. So here's how you use it instead of fighting it. Schedule idle time. Not scrolling, not working, just let your brain roam. Walk without headphones. Your brain loves silence more than you realize. Write things down. Some of your best ideas will sneak up on you when you're not even trying. Don't panic when your focus drifts. It's not dementia, it's deep. One more thing. In our hyper-productive, always-on world, daydreaming gets a bad rap. It's seen as laziness or zoning out. But in reality, it's a mental superpower, and yours is only getting sharper. Because now, when your mind wanders, it doesn't just float. It connects. It ties old experiences with new ideas. It looks around corners. It digs beneath the obvious. So next time you find yourself staring out the window, lost in thought, don't scold yourself. Smile, because your brain is quietly doing something extraordinary. You need more recovery time from information overload. Ever find yourself reading an article or watching a video,
And halfway through, you're not absorbing a single word of it. Or maybe you're doom scrolling through social media, hopping from headline to headline, and suddenly you just feel fried, like your brain hit a wall. Yeah, that's not just burnout. That's information fatigue. And if you're over 50, it hits harder than it used to. Let's get into why. See, when you were younger, your brain could juggle a lot more stimulation without waving the white flag. That's partly because of dopamine, the brain chemical that helps you seek out novelty, handle incoming info, and stay motivated. But after 50, dopamine production slows down, which means your brain has to work harder to stay engaged when things get overwhelming. Now combine that with how the internet works. Constant notifications, fast scrolling feeds, pop-up ads, autoplay everything. It's like your brain is being sprayed with a fire hose of data every single day. And at some point, it just shuts the door. Not because you're lazy, but because your neurology demands recovery. What used to feel like, I'm tired, now becomes a full-on cognitive hangover. You might feel foggy, forget what you just read, lose focus halfway through a sentence, or just feel this low-level irritability that doesn't go away until you unplug. Here's the cool part, though. Taking breaks now isn't just about catching your breath. It's actually preserving your mental clarity. Your brain, especially after 50, needs spaciousness to make sense of all the input it receives. You literally process information better when you pause. Downtime activates your brain's cleaning systems, your memory consolidation, and even your creativity. So when people say just rest, it's not laziness, it's maintenance. And the irony? When you give yourself proper recovery time, you become sharper, not slower. So what does that look like in real life? Try a tech Sabbath. Even half a day a week without screens can reset your brain's overstimulation. Use airplane mode intentionally, not just on flights, during meals, before bed, during conversations. Don't fill every quiet moment. Waiting in line? Sitting in the car? Just be. Let your mind go offline. Let your eyes rest too. Looking at trees or faraway landscapes literally calms your visual cortex. Do boring things, folding laundry, walking without earbuds, staring out the window. It's mental composting. One more thing that surprises people. You don't need to do something to recover. You just need to stop doing everything else. Silence, stillness, space. They're not optional luxuries anymore. They're brain fuel. Because the older you get, the less your brain can afford to be in constant on mode. But when you give it what it actually needs, time to breathe, space to reflect, freedom from noise, it thanks you with a better memory, better judgment, more peace, and fewer moments where you think, wait, what was I just doing again? So yeah, that tech break you've been thinking about, it's not just a good idea. It might be the smartest thing you do all day.
Downtime with pets reduces cortisol more effectively post-50. Okay, let's just start with the obvious. Pets are great. Whether you're a dog person, a cat person, or you've got a soft spot for parrots, guinea pigs, or that turtle you've had since 1992, animals just get us. And if you're in your 50s or beyond, that connection gets even deeper. And no, this isn't just some sweet anecdotal stuff. There's actual science behind why cuddling with your dog might be doing more for you now than it ever did in your 30s. Let's talk about cortisol for a second. That's your main stress hormone, the thing that gets released when you're running late, when your email inbox is overflowing, or when you suddenly remember that appointment you forgot to reschedule. When cortisol stays high for too long, it messes with your sleep, your memory, your immune system, and even your weight. Basically, chronic stress wears your body down. Now here's where pets come in.
Studies show that simply petting an animal for 10 to 15 minutes can significantly lower cortisol levels. But here's the kicker. That effect is stronger in people over 50. Your body actually becomes more responsive to calming, nonverbal cues as you age. That gentle tail whack, the purring under your hand, the soft rhythmic breathing of a dog asleep at your feet, these things hit your nervous system like a spa day. Why is that? Well, part of it is neurobiology. As we get older, the oxytocin system, that's the hormone that makes you feel bonded, safe, and relaxed, gets more active in social situations that feel emotionally safe. And nothing feels safer than your loyal golden retriever looking at you like you're the center of the universe. That oxytocin boost doesn't just feel good, it also counteracts cortisol. They're biochemical opposites, so while stress revs you up, pet time slows you down, gently, naturally, and with zero side effects. But there's another layer to this. As you pass 50, you might start to feel like your social circles are shrinking. Maybe the kids have moved out. Maybe work doesn't provide the same sense of community it used to. Maybe you're not going out every weekend like you used to in your 30s. That's actually totally normal. It's part of what scientists call social pruning. You start focusing on more meaningful connections and drop the shallow ones. The problem is that can sometimes leave emotional gaps. And guess what fills them beautifully? Animals. Pets don't just reduce stress, they also reduce loneliness. And loneliness after 50 isn't just a sad vibe, it's a health risk. Research has shown that chronic loneliness in older adults can increase the risk of heart disease, stroke, and even dementia. But regular time spent with a pet, even if it's just sitting quietly in the same room, reduces those risks. It's like passive emotional support on tap. And it works better now than it did when you were 25 and constantly surrounded by people. Now, if you're thinking, okay, but I don't have a pet, don't worry, the benefits don't only come from ownership. Even volunteering at a shelter once a week or visiting a friend who has pets can trigger this stress-reducing, oxytocin-boosting effect. In fact, some senior living communities are starting to implement regular animal-assisted therapy, not just for fun, but because the research backs it up. Heart rate lowers, blood pressure improves, and people report feeling more connected to the world. And that connection? That's the real medicine. Here's another surprising bonus. People who walk their dogs tend to have higher daily step counts and lower instances of depression. You're not just de-stressing with pets, you're moving more, talking to other pet owners, sticking to routines, and getting outside, all of which are ridiculously important for your physical and mental health post-50. So next time you're curled up on the couch with your cat snoring on your lap or your dog sprawled out like a furry throw pillow, don't feel guilty for taking a break. That moment of stillness, that pause, that's your nervous system recalibrating. That's your blood pressure easing down. That's your aging body saying, yes, this is exactly what I needed. We spend so much of our adult lives pushing, striving, running from one thing to the next. But somewhere around 50, something shifts. And suddenly, slowing down doesn't feel like weakness. It feels like wisdom. And sometimes the wisest thing you can do is sit still and let a little ball of fur remind you that being alive doesn't have to be loud or busy to be meaningful. So if anyone ever questions why you're spending your afternoon just watching your dog dream about chasing squirrels, you can tell them this is neuroscience-approved self-care.
Snacking patterns become biologically impactful. You've probably heard that grazing throughout the day, little meals, lots of snacks, keeps your metabolism fired up, right? Maybe you've even followed that advice for years. A handful of almonds here, a granola bar there, maybe a smoothie before dinner. It feels healthy, controlled. But here's the twist. Once you hit your 50s, that snacking habit might quietly start working against you. Let's talk about insulin, the hormone that helps your body absorb and store sugar from the foods you eat. When you're younger, your body handles insulin with relative ease. You eat, insulin rises, glucose gets processed, and everything resets. But after 50, that smooth cycle starts getting creaky. Your insulin sensitivity naturally declines, meaning your body needs more insulin to handle the same amount of food, especially carbs. Now here's where the problem with frequent snacking comes in. Every time you eat, even a tiny healthy snack, your insulin rises. And if you're eating 5, 6, even 8 times a day, your body never gets a chance to return to baseline. Your insulin stays elevated for hours. And long-term, chronically high insulin leads to insulin resistance, a condition that sets the stage for type 2 diabetes, belly fat, fatigue, and even cognitive issues. You might think, but my snacks are clean: nuts, fruit, hummus. And sure, those are better than candy bars or chips, but after 50, timing matters more than content. Even healthy snacks can trigger an insulin response, and if that response happens too often, your cells get desensitized. The result? Your blood sugar starts swinging, your energy drops, and your metabolism slows down, all without you eating a single bad food. This is especially important if you're noticing stubborn weight gain around the midsection, even if your calorie intake hasn't changed. That's not just about what you're eating, but how often. Your body becomes more dependent on insulin rhythm and recovery windows, the quiet periods between meals where your hormones can reset, your blood sugar can normalize, and your metabolism can recalibrate. Constant snacking interrupts that recovery process. There's also another sneaky layer: digestive rest. After 50, your digestive tract moves slower. Constant snacking means your gut is always processing, which can lead to bloating, fatigue, and nutrient absorption issues. Giving your system time to rest, even just 4 to 5 hours between meals, can improve everything from energy levels to bowel regularity to sleep quality. Now, this doesn't mean you need to jump into intermittent fasting or skip meals. It means you need to be strategic. Try shifting to 3 solid meals a day, with enough protein, fiber, and healthy fats to keep you full, and see how your body responds. You may find that your cravings drop, your energy stabilizes, and those stubborn pounds finally start moving. The bottom line: after 50, snacking isn't just a habit, it's a metabolic decision. Your body needs longer windows between food to regulate insulin, support digestion, and protect long-term health. And the good news is, you're not giving anything up. You're just giving your body the breaks it's been silently asking for. Because in your 50s, wellness isn't just about what you eat, it's about when.
Tactile hobbies can slow cognitive decline. You ever watch someone knit, paint, or shape clay and wonder why it seems peaceful? Like there's something grounding about it, even if you're just watching. That's not just nostalgia or Pinterest envy. It's something much deeper. Turns out, after 50, your brain actually craves more tactile input. And when you give it that, through things like pottery, woodworking, sewing, painting, or even sculpting, you're doing way more than creating art. You're giving your brain a serious cognitive workout. See, your hands and fingers are dense with nerve endings. They're some of the most information-rich tools your body has. When you do something that requires fine motor control, like threading a needle, sanding wood, or gently applying brush strokes, your brain has to fire on multiple levels: sensory perception, spatial reasoning, coordination, timing, and attention. And here's the fascinating part. Those sensory and motor networks tend to decline first with age,
not because they can't be maintained, but because we stop using them. Think about it. How often are your hands doing anything besides typing on a keyboard, scrolling your phone, or maybe holding a fork? Most modern tasks are repetitive and low stimulation. But back in the day, we used our hands for everything. Gardening, fixing, weaving, crafting. That wasn't just culture. That was cognitive maintenance in disguise. Now research is showing that tactile hobbies, things that involve touch, texture, pressure, and repetition, light up areas of the brain that are distinct from those used during verbal or visual tasks. And when those networks get activated, especially regularly, they create something called neuroprotective redundancy. Translation? You build extra brain pathways that help buffer against age-related decline, memory loss, and even dementia. In simple terms, when you take up a tactile hobby, you're not just killing time. You're literally growing resilience in your brain. Think of it like cross-training, but for your mind. Especially after 50, when cognitive flexibility starts to slow down, anything that activates underused brain real estate is golden. There's also something soothing about the rhythm of these activities. Whether it's the repetitive pull of yarn through needles, the swirl of a paintbrush, or the soft resistance of clay out your palms, it calms your nervous system. That lowers cortisol. That improves sleep. That supports mood stability. Suddenly, that random little hobby becomes a mental health tool. And you don't need to be good at it. That's the best part. The brain doesn't care if your painting looks like a toddler's dream sequence or if your handmade bowl is a little lopsided. It cares that you're engaging, feeling, adjusting, problem-solving, and finishing something, all of which give your brain the stimulation it needs to stay adaptable. Plus, tactile hobbies give you something modern life often takes away, a sense of physical progress. You can see your work unfold. You can touch your improvement. And that kind of feedback, incredibly powerful for people in their 50s and beyond, especially when so much of daily life becomes abstract, emails, apps, and spreadsheets. Want an even bigger bonus? If you do these hobbies socially, in a class, a club, even casually with friends, you add another layer of brain protection, social connection. And that combination, manual work plus social bonding, is like a cocktail of anti-aging goodness for your brain. So if you've ever thought, I should try pottery, or maybe I'll finally learn how to paint, this is your sign. Don't do it to be productive. Don't do it to be impressive. Do it because your brain actually needs it and because you deserve the joy of making something with your hands. You're not just crafting objects, you're crafting brain resilience. One brushstroke, one carving, one stitch at a time.
Regular social rituals matter more than spontaneous hangouts. When you're younger, friendships are mostly built on spontaneity. You bump into someone at work, grab drinks last minute, or meet people through your kids. But as you get older, especially after 50, that randomness starts to fade. People move, retire, slow down, or just drift. And suddenly, it becomes clear. If you don't plan a connection, you risk losing it. That's where social rituals come in. Weekly coffee catch-ups, monthly game nights, annual camping trips, Sunday dinners. These aren't just cute traditions. They're psychological infrastructure. Regular, predictable gatherings become the scaffolding that holds your emotional world together, especially in midlife, when social isolation starts to creep in, often without warning. Here's the thing. After 50, your social circle tends to prune itself.
You're less tolerant of shallow relationships and more selective about where your time goes. That's healthy. But it also means that you're working with a smaller core group of people. And if those relationships aren't maintained, the consequences hit harder. Enter rituals. Unlike spontaneous hangouts, which are increasingly rare once everyone has careers, aging parents, grandkids, or health routines, rituals don't rely on energy or mood. They run on rhythm. They remove friction. You don't have to text, "When are you free?" every week. Everyone just knows. Thursday is cards night. First Saturday is brunch. That consistency lowers planning fatigue and increases follow-through. And the benefits go beyond logistics. Neuroscience shows that predictable social contact reduces cortisol and stabilizes mood. It reinforces your sense of belonging, gives you something to look forward to, and provides subtle emotional checkpoints. You may not have a heart-to-heart every time, but you'll start to notice if someone seems off, tired, or distant. That ongoing emotional surveillance, done gently, through regular presence, is what helps people feel seen and supported without needing to constantly ask for help. It also creates shared memory. Rituals generate a living narrative between people. Inside jokes, traditions, milestones, these aren't just fluff. They're emotional glue. Especially important at a time in life when change is constant. Retirement, illness, loss, relocation. The steadiness of "we always meet here like we always have" becomes its own form of safety. Even more interesting, social rituals boost health markers. Older adults with regular social routines tend to have better immune function, lower blood pressure, and stronger cognitive resilience. It's not just the laughter or the conversation, it's the predictability. The knowing that someone will be there reliably, even when the rest of life feels uncertain. So if you've been wondering whether that monthly book club, those Friday family dinners, or that early morning walking group is still worth it, the answer is yes. Deeply, biologically, emotionally, yes. You don't need a packed calendar. You just need a few consistent anchors. And if you don't have those yet, start one. Keep it simple, low stakes, low pressure, high reliability. No one needs an elaborate gathering. They need consistency. And you'd be surprised how much peace and connection that can bring, especially after 50, when emotional stability is often found in repetition, not novelty. Because sometimes the most meaningful moments don't come from surprise. They come from showing up again and again with the people that matter.
Imagine walking through a forest trail, the crunch of gravel under your shoes, sunlight filtering through leaves, a faint scent of pine in the air, birds calling from different directions, maybe a cool breeze brushes your face. That's not just a nice moment. It's a cognitive workout. As you age, your brain starts to prefer efficiency over novelty. It conserves energy. It streamlines. But that can come at a cost: understimulation. Multisensory environments help counteract that. They light up multiple brain networks at once: vision, hearing, touch, even smell and balance. And this kind of layered stimulation is especially protective after 50.
Research shows that environments rich in light, color, sound, and texture can actually slow down cognitive aging, not just by keeping your senses active, but by promoting plasticity in areas of the brain related to memory, attention, and spatial reasoning. It's why some retirement communities now include sensory gardens. It's why art museums, music halls, or even farmers markets can be therapeutic. It doesn't have to be grand. A walk through a vibrant neighborhood with its shifting colors, architecture, street sounds, and smells activates far more of your brain than scrolling your phone or watching TV. These moments demand real-time interpretation. Is that smell from a bakery? What is that bird call? That mural's new. What does it mean? The key here is multisensory novelty, not just one sense in isolation, but several interacting at once. That interaction helps with neural crosstalk, keeping your pathways flexible and engaged. It's like keeping a conversation going between different departments of your brain. If you don't stimulate those connections regularly, they can weaken over time. This also explains why multisensory hobbies, like dancing, which combines rhythm, movement, music, and spatial awareness, or cooking, touch, smell, taste, and timing, are some of the best activities you can engage in after 50. They don't just entertain, they exercise the whole system. Even passive exposure works. Just changing your environment regularly, walking a different path, visiting a new market, rearranging your living space can give your brain the signal that it's still in a dynamic world. This signal increases dopaminergic activity, which helps with motivation and memory retention. And there's another bonus. These environments tend to be emotionally uplifting. Sunlight, nature, soft music, vibrant colors, these sensory inputs can reduce anxiety and lift mood, which also protect cognition. Emotional tone and cognitive performance are more linked than most people realize, especially as you age. So if you've been feeling mentally foggy or uninspired, don't just reach for brain puzzles. Step into a richer environment. Visit that gallery. Go to a botanical garden. Sit by a fountain. Bake something new with your hands. Let your brain experience the world like a symphony, not a solo. Because in your 50s and beyond, how your brain stays sharp isn't about pushing harder. It's about feeding it better input. Multisensory, meaningful, and dynamic input. Not overwhelming, just rich. And the more often you do it, the more your brain will remember what it's capable of.